Chapter 911. Mrs. Wang was so angry that her chest heaved up and down. She pointed at Jing Yunzhao and scolded her incessantly. Even the other women were the same. They hated Jing Yunzhao to the extreme. She had accumulated a lot of popularity among these rich ladies over the years. Almost everyone thought that she was an elegant and magnanimous woman. Even if they didn't give her face, they had to consider her identity as the mayor's wife. Mrs. Wang's voice was not soft, and the words "little vixen" touched the women's most sensitive spot. Immediately, the atmosphere became lively. There was a security guard in a black suit waiting at the scene. When he heard the commotion, he immediately walked over. Qin Shui had been watching Jing Yunzhao's situation. When she saw the security guard go over, she immediately followed. Jing Yunzhao pursed her lips and smiled. It made people's hearts tighten. She didn't need to explain. If she cared about Su Yuantek, she wouldn't let Mrs. Wang call her a vixen. After all, now that they had quarreled like this, Su Yuantek would definitely notice. The only thing she could do now was to show her politeness and respect. Mrs. Wang, be careful with your words. Miss Jing is our Su family's VIP. She gritted her teeth and said. She had been schemed against by a little girl. She had left a good impression on people over the years. However, this time, she had offended Mrs. Wang because of Jing Yunzhao. Other than Mrs. Wang, other people would also be disappointed in her. Mrs. Wang was stunned. She had known Shunshi for many years. It seemed that this was the first time she had seen her so angry. However, she was clearly venting for her. What did Shunshi mean by this? Madams, what happened? The security guard hurried over and asked. Mrs. Wang was still angry. Who brought this girl here? Throw her out. This? The security guard hesitated. He remembered that he had seen this little girl chatting with Mayor Su. They seemed to be talking happily. I brought her. Qin Shui came over with a sullen face. Who are you? Mrs. Wang frowned. She didn't recognize this person. It doesn't matter who I am. I just don't know what our director Jing has done to make you chase her out. Qin Shui continued with a cold expression. This banquet invitation was personally selected by Mayor Su. As a VIP, Director Jing originally wanted to contribute to this project, but what do you mean by this? Before he came, Jing Yunzhao had told him that Yunling was in the pharmaceutical business after all, and it was important to have a charitable reputation. Therefore, he was not going to be stingy with his funding this time. Although he thought that it would be beneficial to the company had just started, and he was afraid that the company would not have enough funds. However, who knew that Jing Yunzhao did not care about money at all? He had transferred a huge sum of money from somewhere. Not to mention donating a part of the project, it would not be a problem for him to take over the entire project. At this moment, Qin Shui's words caused the women to be stunned. Chairman Jing? What do you mean? Are you kidding me? Mrs. Wang's face stiffened as she snorted. How old was this child? How dare he call her Director Jing? Who was he kidding? Although our Yunling medicine has just been established, we are not as easy to knead as dough. Director Jing, since everyone doesn't welcome us, then forget it. Qin Shui then looked at the security guard beside him and said, Please go and tell Mayor Su and the others that our Yunling medicine is not qualified to attend such an event. We will leave first. With that, Qin Shui pretended to leave with Jing Yunzhao. Jing Yunzhao was clear about this, so he was happy to cooperate. He slowly put down his wine glass and glanced at Shunshi. 80 million yuan was wasted just because you called her a vixen. Really, every word is worth 1,000 gold. Chapter 912. Most of the people who came to the banquet this time were prepared to spend a lot of money. However, even if they were rich businessmen, money didn't come from nowhere. If it was an investment that could make more money, of course they wouldn't be stingy. But now, what they were doing was just to give Su Yuantek some face. 10 or 20 million was enough. No one would squander too much. However, there were many people present. San would make a tower. They definitely wouldn't lack the last 1 billion. The moment Jing Yunzhao opened her mouth, she asked for 80 million. It was indeed shocking. She said this deliberately. At this time, a person in charge of the banquet passed by. When he heard this, he immediately stopped her. Even if the person in charge didn't know Jing Yunzhao, he would know Qin Shui. President Qin, this young lady, Did we not take good care of her? As he spoke, he glanced at the security guard. The security guard looked very innocent. I wouldn't dare, Jing Yunjiao said softly. Then, she said, Mrs. Su and the other ladies are very arrogant. They think that 80 million is just a small amount, so they are prepared to pay for me. They don't want me to be an eyesore here. Some of the women here were quite innocent. However, if they didn't receive a strong dose of medicine, how could they see clearly what kind of person Shunshi was? The person in charge was stunned for a moment. After glancing at the women suspiciously, he asked, Miss, you are? This is the chairman of Yunling Medicine. Qin Shui looked proud. Yunling Medicine? The person in charge was shocked. He was in charge of the banquet. How could he not know what kind of company Yunling Medicine was? When the invitations were being sent out, Mayor Su had specifically instructed them to inform this company. Furthermore, he had also asked around and found out that although this Yunling Medicine was a new company, it had pushed many established pharmaceutical companies down in one fell swoop. This was a company that the military had a stake in. One of the pharmaceutical factories even provided medicine for the military. The construction of this company's factory was done by the military. They had been riding on the military's coattails all the way and hadn't encountered any trouble at all. When he first heard about it, he thought that it was the military in disguise. He thought that the mysterious chairman must be someone from the military, but it turned out to be a little girl. Chairman Jing, there must be some misunderstanding. I'll get someone to invite Mayor Su over. After saying that, he immediately arranged for the service staff to walk over to Su Yuan Tech. Xinshi panicked when she saw this. She couldn't let her husband see Jing Yunjiao. But what should he do? Ouch! I'm so dizzy. Miss Jing, can you accompany me upstairs to rest? By the way, I have something to tell you. Xunshi quickly said. Mrs. Su, you seem to have frequent headaches. The last time you saw me and Grandpa Su at the mall, did you have headaches like this too? It just so happens that I know some medical skills. When Mayor Su comes over, I'll treat you in front of him. Jing Yunjiao's smile was bright and beautiful, but it sent chills down one's spine. Xunshi's face turned pale, and the muscles on her chin trembled. Yes, it's time to meet. Miss Jing, my husband will be very happy to see you later, Xunshi said again. Since she couldn't hide, she could only accept her fate. Fortunately, she didn't do anything on the surface. Even if Jing Yunjiao and Su Xianlan looked alike, she had a reason not to introduce her to her husband. Her husband should understand. Haha, we met just now. Mayor Su is indeed very happy. I feel like old friends with Mayor Su at first sight, and I was thinking of visiting the Su family more in the future. However, I just heard someone call me a little vixen. I don't know if Mayor Su will still be too close to me if he knows. Jing Yunjiao chuckled with a mocking look in her eyes. Xunshi's forced smile froze when she heard this. She met? Then what was she doing for so long just now? Did Jing Yunjiao do it on purpose? Did she deliberately make her nervous? But how did she know so much about her? Chapter 9:13. Looking at Xunshi's shocked face, Jing Yunjiao suddenly felt much better. She looked at Xunshi with a sly and cold smile. At this time, when the people around them heard her words, they were puzzled and felt guilty. Mrs. Wang, in particular, was even more confused. Today seemed to be too strange for her. She spoke up for Mrs. Su, but was inexplicably splashed with red wine. Obviously, she was wronged. But Mrs. Su was on the side of the little girl who hit her. Now, this little girl had become Director Jing in the blink of an eye, and was even familiar with Mayor Su? Mrs. Su, you clearly said that she was from the countryside. Mrs. Wang felt aggrieved. When did Xunshi do things like this? Could it be that he wanted to harm her on purpose? When she saw Mrs. Wang's slightly angry attitude, she was so angry that she wanted to grind her teeth to dust. Previously, she thought that Jing Yunjiao was just a simple little girl, but now it seemed that it wasn't the case. From the time she appeared until now, she seemed to be causing trouble, but in the end, she made her suffer unspeakably. Her appearance here probably wasn't a coincidence. It might even have been arranged. Perhaps the old man had acquiesced to it. She felt uncomfortable, but at this time, she could not explain to Mrs. Wang. She even had to say that Mrs. Wang was wrong. And this Mrs. Wang, although she was just the wife of a businessman, She was also well known in the upper class and had good relations with people. If she offended her, she was afraid that she would not be able to attend many dinners in the future. Although she was the mayor's wife and did not need to care about these people's opinions, her reputation was built up over the years. It was hard not to be angry when it was lost. After a while, Su Yuantek came as expected. His eyes did not fall on others, but were directly attracted by Jing Yunjiao. He frowned and looked particularly serious. "What's the matter?" Su Yuantek asked. "I'm a guest invited by Mayor Su. Am I right?" Jing Yunjiao raised his eyebrows, full of vigor. At first glance, outsiders would feel that Jing Yunjiao and this Su Yuantek had some similarities. Even their temperaments were the same. It was a little scary. Su Yuantek looked at the face and nodded. "But just now, Mrs. Su said that I was a little girl from the countryside and insisted on giving me money as if I was a beggar. Is this the upbringing of a noble family? By the way, Mrs. Su also called me a little vixen. Mayor Su, I have been living with the old man for 3 years. Our relationship is like that of a grandfather and a grandson. The old man has never insulted me. Why is she pointing at my nose and despising me on this occasion?" Jing Yunjiao was determined to pour dirty water on Shangyi. Judging from Xi's reaction just now, this woman must be very afraid of Su Yuantek. In this case, all the more she could not let go of this opportunity. New hatred and old hatred had accumulated for so long. Today, she had only paid back a little bit of interest. Jing Yunjiao's expression was cold and full of provocation. His eyes were gloomy, which made Shi tremble with anger. But she couldn't explode, especially in front of Su Yuantek. After Jing Yunjiao finished speaking, Su Yuantek raised his eyebrows and glanced at Shi. "Explain." He and Shi had been married for more than 20 years. Naturally, he could not sentence her to death because of Jing Yunjiao's words. But as Jing Yunjiao said, she had been living with the old man for 3 years. Her character must have been confirmed by the old man. Even if what she said was a little exaggerated, there must be some truth in it. Chapter 9:14. If he had to choose between the two of them, Su Yuantek would definitely lean towards Jing Yunjiao, even if it was only the first time they had met. As for Shi, he had never truly understood this woman in the past 20 years. He didn't understand what she wanted, or rather, he didn't want to understand. Back then, their marriage had been like a deal. He had given her a choice, and she had chosen without hesitation. At that moment, he had felt that Shi had an incomparable yearning and obsession for the life of a wealthy family. It made him feel that her infatuation and devotion were all an act. At the beginning of their marriage, for the sake of the young Suyu, he had considered whether he should try to become a real husband and wife with Shi. But it was just a fleeting thought, because he couldn't help but resist her. She was sensible, elegant, and gentle. She used almost all her strength to get close to this circle. When she was unhappy, she was gentle and magnanimous. When faced with ridicule from others, she was gentle and magnanimous, just like how she treated him. To put it bluntly, all her reactions were not like that of a normal person. They were more like preset characters. She tried her best to blend into that character, regardless of the cost, and treated everyone equally, which made him feel that this woman would never be able to move his heart. And Jing Yunjiao might have Su Xinlan's blood running through his veins, as well as the teachings of his grandfather. These factors were more reliable than his own investigation. At this moment, Su Yuantek's seemingly cold words made Shi feel like she was in an ice cellar. Her face trembled a few times before she adjusted herself. A gentle and aggrieved smile appeared on her face, and she said, "Hubby, Miss Jing misunderstood. There's something I haven't told you. I knew that Miss Jing and her father-in-law had come to the capital long ago, but her father-in-law didn't want to see us, so he told me not to tell anyone. This was something that Miss Jing personally told my sister, so I thought that Miss Jing was just an ordinary girl from Huaning County. I wanted her to have fun, and I was afraid that she didn't have enough money, so I was too nosy. I didn't expect Miss Jing to be so capable that she even started a company. About the vixen just now." She glanced at the nervous Mrs. Wang and said with a smile. Mrs. Wang said it out of concern. She saw that Miss Jing looked like Xianlan, so she was afraid that she was a bad person. "Miss Jing, I apologize." At the side, Mrs. Wang was so angry that she was dumbfounded. Jing Yunjiao didn't even expose her, but shunned she actually. Mrs. Wang, I don't know what evidence you have to say that this child is a vixen. Su Yuantek's expression was particularly ugly. Even though the DNA test hadn't been done yet, in his heart, he already regarded Jing Yunjiao as his niece. Saying that his niece seduced him? Where did the courage come from? Mayor Su. Mrs. Wang was just about to speak when Jing Yunjiao called out first, and then said, speaking of which, I have to apologize to Mrs. Wang. I just splashed red wine on you. I'm very sorry. Mrs. Wang was already confused. What the hell was Jing Yunjiao doing now? The red face became white face, and the white face became red face. Mrs. Wang is a straightforward and righteous person. She couldn't stand Mrs. Su's attitude when she gave me money, but I didn't respond, so she was a little unhappy and said a few words. I'm young and impatient, so I made a move. So, speaking of this matter, it has nothing to do with her. Jing Yunjiao opened her mouth to clarify for her. She was a person who was dragged in for no reason. Chapter 9:15. Shun, she clenched her fists. This Jing Yunjiao was too scheming. This Mrs. Wang was in cahoots with her, but she had picked the glass room for no reason. That was one thing. But now, she was actually trying to be a good person. Su Yuantek was not a fool. At this time, he could clearly feel Jing Yunjiao's hostility toward Shunqi. Since this matter has nothing to do with outsiders, let's talk about it when we get home. Su Yuantek looked deeply at Shen Shi and frowned. If Jing Yunjiao was his niece, there would definitely be a time when they would be living under the same roof. At that time, he hoped that Shunqi would grow some brains, lest she couldn't even figure out the thoughts of the younger generation. But just like when he was not married, when he found his niece, he would definitely be more affectionate. Since Su Yuantek had spoken, she could only nod obediently. She felt extremely nauseous in her heart. She knew that her husband was unhappy, but he couldn't vent his anger in front of outsiders, so he left her some face. At this time, the real goal of the banquet began. The people on the stage introduced the charity project this time. The projects were divided into several categories. The main ones were medical treatment and poverty alleviation. The funds raised would be announced. For these companies, it was a glorious and beautiful thing. Therefore, compared to the previous charity fundraising, the scale of this project was obviously larger, and the money raised was more than 10 times more than before. Of course, in addition to the money from these rich businessmen, the government would also contribute. Therefore, after the banquet, it would definitely attract a lot of attention. After the incident just now, Mrs. Wang and the others accompanied their men and became very quiet. However, they looked at Shunqi with disappointment and indifference. In addition, they were also curious about whether Jing Yunjiao's exposed identity was true or not, and whether the so-called 80 million was a bluff. When the project introduction ended, the people below the stage began to raise their placards. The amount of money they would spend must be estimated first and made public. First, it would save their face. Second, there would be proof of receipt in the future. Baikan Project donated 8 million. Dejin Industries has donated 11 million. Radiophonic Media, 20 million. Huas Jewelry, 25 million. Cloud Spirit Medicine, donate $80 million. Amidst the usual 10 to 20 million voices, there was a sudden addition of a very sudden number. Everyone immediately turned their heads to look at the waiter holding the sign in the crowd. They couldn't help but feel suspicious in their hearts. Was there a mistake? 80 million wasn't a sky-high price for a company that had made billions, or even tens of billions over the years. However, it wasn't a small sum of money that could be thrown away at will. This amount of money was enough to buy a company. Although the reputation of charity was important, it was inconceivable to donate so much for this. Moreover, this Yunling Medicine seemed to be a newly established company. When a new company was operating, it would require a lot of money. However, after looking over, everyone felt that it was a little strange. Chairman Qin of Yunling Medicine looked a little strange. He let a girl stand in front of him, and he himself looked like a subordinate. Just now, someone seemed to have said that the person in charge of Yunling Medicine was a little girl. Could it be true? Jing Yunjiao didn't avoid the gazes that were directed at her. She also didn't explain much. She wasn't very passionate about money. In fact, when she started a medical company, She had the idea of doing good deeds. This 80 million wouldn't affect the operation of the company at all. Since she was going to donate it anyway, she might as well take the lead and attract attention. She could also make a name for herself and live up to her conscience. Chapter 9:16. Even Su Yuantek was a little shocked by the 80 million. He looked at her with a complicated gaze. If Jing Yunjiao was really his niece, then he wouldn't feel too good about it. This child was 18 years old this year, but her thoughts were too heavy and her work was too steady. To be able to achieve her current achievements at such a young age, she must have suffered a lot in the past. He believed that the company did not have the old man's help because the old man was not that kind of person at all. Even his own children were left to their own devices. He would never feed the cooked food into the children's mouths. In fact, he despised those idiots who only knew how to rely on others. However, the more she was like this, the more she seemed like someone with the blood of the Su family. Compared to that useless son of his, she was many times better. The charity banquet ended amidst the sighs of the crowd. Yunling medicine attracted a lot of attention. That night, there were many people who investigated Yunling medicine. Almost everyone wanted to know if the company's CEO was this extremely beautiful little girl. Unfortunately, the results were the same. Qin Shui was only a CEO, but they could not find out who his boss was. After leaving the banquet, Jing Yunjiao did not return to school. Instead, she sat in Su Yuantek's car. The two of them went straight to the paternity testing center that night. Su Yuantek came personally because he had pulled some strings. Su Yuantek's gaze was serious. Jing Yunjiao was a little embarrassed. The old man had told her that once she appeared, Su Yuantek would definitely have some expectations. This man was polite to her and was not bad. However, this time, he would definitely be disappointed. Jing Yunjiao was a little absent-minded when she came to this place. She had never been very enthusiastic about finding her parents. Was it a little wrong? However, she had encountered too many things over the years. The parent-child relationship that she had never interacted with made her feel pressured. It was the only thing she did not want to face. She could control her emotions and knew how to deal with people who were not related to her. However, if it was her own family, she did not know how to deal with them. Jing Yunjiao smiled bitterly. Really, he was affected by Mayor Su's emotions. That was why he suddenly felt so emotional. Su Yuantek had left traces of Su Xianlan many years ago. There was hair and blood. Originally, Jing Yunjiao only needed to pull out a strand of hair. However, Su Yuantek was extremely suspicious and cautious. In the end, he decided to take the hair and blood for a test as well. With his identity, the waiting time would definitely not be as long as a few days or even weeks like those hospitals. However, even so, he would still have to wait until dawn at the earliest. After providing her hair and blood, Su Yuantek obviously didn't let her leave. There's a lounge in the appraisal center. You can rest there first, Su Yuantek said. Mayor Su, what about you? How many hours do we have to wait here? Jing Yunjiao was a little surprised.
Yes.
Su Yuantek breathed a sigh of relief and looked at the time on his watch. Fortunately, I asked someone to send the documents over. I'll take care of it while I'm at it. I'll just kill some time. God knew how he had lived for so many years. Every time he closed his eyes, he could remember Su Xianlan grabbing his arm and begging him to let her be. She said that although Li Tianyi was a member of the Li family, he was different. Instead of staying in the capital and facing the wrath of the two families, it was better to leave and live a peaceful life elsewhere. She also said that if she could not be with Li Tianyi, the two of them would suffer for the rest of their lives, just like Jing Wenyue and Imo Zhengyin did decades ago. Chapter 9:17. Thinking of the past, Su Yuantek's eyes flashed with regret. That was his younger sister. Although she was only 6 or 7 years older than him, he had raised her single-handedly. If he had known that he would never see her again after that farewell, he would rather imprison her in the Su family for the rest of her life. It was better than not seeing her alive or dead. Li Tianyi was a good man, but his father was not. Because his surname was Li, he was destined to have a bad ending. He should have thought of this. Jing Yunjiao thought for a while and sat down next to Su Yuantek. I heard a lot about Su Xianlan from Uncle Xing Yuan. After a long time, I'm really curious. Jing Yunjiao leaned back and murmured. Not only was he curious, but he was also a little envious. She was actually a very happy woman. Her parents loved her, her elder brother spoiled her, and her younger brother respected and missed her. She had a very good reputation. People who knew her couldn't help but sigh when they talked about her. There was no slander, only exaggeration and praise. Even though this person had disappeared for 18 years, he was still remembered and missed by the people around him. Xianlan was good in all aspects, but she had a fatal weakness. She could risk her life for love. Su Yuantek looked into the distance and said, Li Tianyi's mother died early, and his stepmother married him. Although he was the eldest son, he was controlled everywhere. However, he was very smart. He had a photographic memory and was familiar with all kinds of medical books. Unfortunately, he was not valued by the family, and no one taught him carefully. That was until he met Xianlan. Xianlan was born in a family of pharmacists, but she also knew medicine. Every time she found something Li Tianyi didn't know, she would ask my father in a roundabout way. The Su family and the Li family had some relationship. My father pretended not to know, but he didn't forget to teach him. It could be said that the old man was Li Tianyi's teacher. Later, he really became a talent. He had excellent medical skills at a young age. He was elegant and treated people kindly. He also gained a lot of reputation for treating and saving people. It's a pity that he's too open-minded and doesn't fight for anything in the Li family. Old Master Li doesn't like him, and the same goes for the old man in the Li family. He will never allow the Su family's daughter to marry into the family. Su Yuantek slowly said a few words. There were some things that I couldn't ask you before, but I really don't understand why the Su family and the Li family don't get along. Jing Yunjiao thought for a while and asked the question that had been bothering him for a long time. The Su family is a pharmaceutical family with a 1,000-year-old heritage. You should know that, right? Su Yuantek asked. Jing Yunjiao nodded. Like the Su family, there's also the Jing family, which specializes in medicine. The Su and Jing families have been very close since ancient times, and each of them has their own duties. In the past, the old man and Jing Wenyue's generation were very close. They were even like siblings. Unfortunately, the Jing family's medical skills were too good, and they attracted attention during the war back then. As a result, they didn't have many children, and Jing Wenyue was the only one left to inherit the family. According to the ancestral teachings, only men can marry into the family, but not outside the family. Jing Yunjiao continued nodding. She had heard all this before. Jing Wenyue liked Imo Zhengyin, but Professor Imo was proud and arrogant. In the end, Jing Wenyue married Li Wenba, who had been helping the Jing family for many years, in order to inherit the family's legacy. The Li family was considered the Jing family's old shopkeeper a long time ago. A few decades ago, they were in charge of some of the Jing family's affairs. The marriage between the two families was considered a good thing. Moreover, the Li family and the Jing family had been close for many years, so they were considered reliable. However, they became the source of the disaster. Hearing this, Jing Yunjiao's heart trembled. She felt that some of the things that she had been confused about before were starting to unravel. She originally thought that the Jing and Li families were two different families. Chapter 9:18. When Jing Wenyue got married, my father personally attended as her elder brother. Both families were very lively. Since Li Wenba married into the family, their children should naturally follow the Jing family's surname. Thus, not long after Jing Wenyue got pregnant, the Jing family and the Su family were extremely happy. After all, regardless of whether the child was a boy or a girl, they would have a successor. But no matter how much they thought about it, they never expected Jing Wenyue to die in childbirth. The Jing family is a medical family. They saved so many people, but in the end, they couldn't save themselves. It was simply lamentable. After Jing Wenyue's death, Li Wenba took over the family assets. The Li family had been entangled with the Jing family for many years, so it was only natural for him to take over the family assets. No one objected at all. Li Wenba used to be extremely fond of Jing Wenyue, so the old man who was obsessed with making medicine didn't think too much about it. However, when Li Tianyi turned 1, Li Wenba officially announced that his son's surname was Li, not Jing. At that time, it was already too late. Everything in the Jing family was secretly controlled by Li Wenba, and completely changed into the Li family's assets. Don't underestimate this surname. There was no one else in the Jing family. Even if the blood of the Jing family flowed in Li Tianyi's body, it was useless. After all, he had Li Wenbo by his side. It was also because of this reason that the Su and Li families fell out, and the Jing family ceased to exist. Su Yuantek's explanation was very clear. Jing Yunzhao now understood even more. No wonder everyone said that the Jing family's bloodline was broken. This didn't mean that Jing Wenyue's son had died, but that the Jing family had no successor and no one to pass on their medical skills. However, when he thought about the medical skills and the surname Jing Yunzhao felt that something was wrong. It couldn't be that coincidental, right? The ancestor in her space was called Jing He. Could he have some connection with the Su and Jing families? With this thought, Jing Yunzhao couldn't sit still. Looking at the tightly shut door, he felt an indescribable sense of worry. Miss Jing, actually, I already know the result. Su Yuantek looked at her and suddenly said. Jing Yunzhao was stunned. It seems that you don't know old Master Su very well. He is a person who is very clear about who is close to him. If you were not related to the Su family, he would guide you, but he would not give you everything wholeheartedly, because the Su family also has its own rules. The ability to make medicine can be passed on to outsiders, but there are also some restrictions. But I can tell from your reaction when you mentioned old Master Su that he will give you everything he wants. Su Yuantek smiled. The reason why he still called her Miss Jie was because he could tell that this girl had no such thoughts at all. Are you not interested in who your parents are at all? Su Yuantek asked again. Jing Yunzhao was so shocked by his first sentence that she didn't know how to react. After a few seconds, she shook her head. I was interested in it before. I even looked forward to meeting my own parents. In her previous life, when she found out that she wasn't Yi Qin's biological daughter, she had fantasized in her heart that it would be great if her parents suddenly found her one day. Even if they weren't rich, even if they didn't have much affection for her, as long as she knew that she wasn't a bastard child, it would be great. But the reality was that it was just a fantasy. After it was shattered, she was only clear-headed and even began to resist. Su Yuantek immediately understood. Sure enough, she had suffered a lot. The two of them were silent for a while. They waited quietly. Time seemed to have frozen, and it passed very slowly. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that every second felt like a year. When the appraiser came out, Su Yuantek's body stiffened, and Jing Yunzhao's heart suddenly began to beat faster. The results are out. The blood test and hair test results are the same. They are related. The appraiser saw Su Yuantek's nervousness and directly said. Chapter 9:19. After the other party finished speaking, he handed over the two reports. The words, parent-child relationship, made Jing Yunzhao dumbfounded. She immediately snatched the reports and hurriedly flipped them open. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. This report, is there a mistake? Jing Yunzhao said with some suspicion. It can't be wrong. You're the only ones doing the appraisal in the middle of the night. Besides, our appraisal center doesn't allow fraud. We've never done any fraud or had any accidents ever since we were established. Due to Su Yuan's presence, the other party spoke very politely. Jing Yunzhao's hands trembled as she held the report. Looking at Su Xianlan's name, she felt dizzy. Su Xianlan was her biological mother? How could it be? From the time she met the old man, she had heard about Su Xianlan's deeds from time to time. However, she never thought that she was her daughter. She always thought that it was just a coincidence that they looked alike. Moreover, even the old man and Uncle Xing Yuan said that Li Tianyi never admitted that he had a child. Staring at the words on the last page, Jing Yunzhao's eyes reddened. She restrained herself. Su Yuantek next to her breathed a sigh of relief. When he looked at Jing Yunzhao again, his eyes were full of affection. Zhao, I'm your uncle. Su Yuantek reached out and touched her head. He sighed and his eyes were full of heartache. In the past, no one thought that Su Xianlan had a child. If they had thought a little more, they probably wouldn't have let her wander outside for so many years. Now, she was slim and elegant, and her personality was independent and strong. The Su family was just icing on the cake for her. Jing Yunzhao's body trembled. I want to calm down a bit. Jing Yunzhao took a few steps back and walked out with the report in her hand. It wasn't that she didn't want to know who her parents were. It was just that she didn't dare to know. In her previous life, when she was about to die, she even had some resentment. Why did her parents give birth to her but throw her away? They made her the daughter of the Chow family. She worked for the Chow family for the rest of her life and was humiliated and even ended up in prison. Now, she didn't resent why she had to suffer more than others. After all, being able to start over was already the greatest blessing that the heavens had given her. She now had friends and a career. Everything was developing according to her wishes. Even if her previous life's unwillingness and resentment appeared in her dreams, as long as she woke up, everything would be gone. But when she didn't have any hope for her biological parents, she actually found her biological mother. It was a joke. She was no longer the fatherless and motherless bastard that other people talked about, but her feelings were very complicated. At this moment, he suddenly understood why Xiao Haiqing still had a trace of softness towards Xiao Daoan even though she resented him for being her father. Indeed, the blood ties in the bones could not be deceived and could not be deceived. So what if he found his biological mother? She wasn't here anymore. The woman she used to envy was her mother, but she didn't even have the chance to see her. In the past, she could still imagine that her parents were living a happy life. But at this moment, that fantasy was empty. Su Yuantek looked at her back and didn't chase after her. This was too sudden for her, and she really needed to wake up. And he also needed to report this to the old man. Once out of the appraisal center, Jing Yunjiao didn't know where to go. Her tightly clenched fists were still trembling. Her eyes were red and her face was pale. It was already early in the morning outside. The sun was shining, but the cold wind was a bit chilly. Jing Yunjiao only had a jacket on over her dress, which attracted the attention of the people at work. Chapter 920. Just as she was in a daze, she felt a weight on her shoulder. She turned her head and saw Li Xiaoyun standing beside her. He reached out and pulled her into his arms. "Why are you here?" Jing Yunjiao's voice was a little hoarse. "Ah Zhao, this is a good thing. From now on, Elder Su is your biological grandfather. You're no longer alone." Li Xiaoyun looked into her eyes and said seriously. Jing Yunjiao's eyes softened. Yes, she had fantasized many times about how great it would be if Elder Su was her relative. "You know?" Jing Yunjiao exhaled and asked again.
Yes.
Li Xiaoyun responded. Feeling her cold hands, he immediately took her into the car. He was the one who told Jing Yunjiao the time of the business banquet. Of course, he knew what Su Yuantek would do if he saw her. Therefore, he had been waiting at the door of the identification center last night. When he saw her walk out in such a daze this morning, he immediately guessed the answer. In fact, he had thought about verifying her identity a long time ago. However, after thinking about it, it wasn't appropriate for an outsider like him to do this kind of thing. Moreover, he wanted Jing Yunjiao as a person. He didn't care if she really had any relationship with the Su family. Therefore, he didn't investigate. Jing Yunjiao immediately felt the surroundings warm up as soon as she got into the car. "What do you think? I suddenly became the granddaughter of the old man. My biological mother is no longer around, and the person who could possibly be my biological father has never acknowledged my existence to the outside world." Jing Yunjiao's expressionless face flashed with a trace of sorrow. Li Xiaoyun knew in his heart that her tolerance wasn't weak. She just needed time to adapt. "Ah Zhao, we'll continue to look for your mother in the future. There's still a long way to go. Whether she's alive or dead, there will be a result. Huaning County is only so big. At most, we'll turn it upside down. As for Li Tianyi, have you ever thought that he might have some difficulties? Li Tianyi is a good man. Maybe he doesn't acknowledge you because he's protecting you. Think about it. If he brings you or talks to his family when he returns to the capital, what will you do? You have the blood of the Su family, the Li family, and the Jing family," Li Xiaoyun reminded. Although the Su family would protect her, if she was brought back to the capital from a young age, she would naturally have to live with the Li family. The Li family would definitely not tolerate the existence of Jing Yunjiao, because the ancestors of the Su and Jing families were the same person. Her bloodline was like a ticking time bomb to the Li family. Jing Yunjiao wasn't stupid. His heart was filled with hope when he said that. However, as she held the report in her hand, She couldn't hold back her tears. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she forcefully restrained herself. There was happiness, but there was also disappointment. After 2 lifetimes of hard work, he finally found the reason. It was extremely complicated. If you want to cry, then cry. Come here. I'll give you a hug. Li Xiaoyun's eyes softened, and he put her hand on his waist. Jing Yunzhao's emotions were already on the verge of collapse. Hearing his words, she couldn't hold back her tears. She buried her head in his embrace, but she felt inexplicably at ease. In her previous life, she didn't like to cry. In fact, she rarely shed tears. When she was young, Yi Qin was biased and Father Qiao was fierce. She once imitated Xiao Hongya and cried for attention. However, even if she cried until her eyes were swollen, what greeted her was still the 2 people's indifferent gazes. Thus, slowly, she knew that her tears were useless. Even if she felt wronged, she could still bear it. However, in reality, it wasn't that she didn't think of venting her feelings once. It was just that after a long time, she had gotten used to it. Chapter 9:21. Jing Yunzhao wept silently. After a short while of releasing her emotions, she looked up and said, "Thank you." Finding her identity was always a good thing. She was sad about the time when she had no one to rely on and the fact that her biological mother did not exist. Her hand was still around Li Xiaoyun's waist. Her eyes were a little misty and red, which was particularly abrupt on her fair face. Seeing that she was about to withdraw her hand, Li Xiaoyun held it and was not prepared to let her escape. "I can let you hug me for the whole day today, it doesn't matter." Jing Yunzhao blushed slightly. "I'm fine," Jing Yunzhao said softly, but she had just cried. Her misty eyes looked like she was acting coquettishly. "Hug me again. You haven't slept all night. Make up for it," Li Xiaoyun continued. Speaking of which, Jing Yunzhao was indeed a little tired. It wasn't physical exhaustion, but mental exhaustion. Perhaps it was because she hadn't vented in such a long time, but she felt a lot more comfortable at this moment. Her heart also felt more relaxed. "Okay, then lend me your leg as a pillow," Jing Yunzhao said a little embarrassedly. She moved her body and laid her whole body on the back seat. She was thin and curled up on the seat. Li Xiaoyun reached out and covered her with his jacket. He tidied her hair and patted her body a few times. "Is my head heavy?" Jing Yunzhao asked softly. "No." Li Xiaoyun pursed his lips. "That's good." Jing Yunzhao closed her eyes and rested for a while. "Xiaoyun, thank you for suddenly showing up today. Not only today, but at any time, whenever she needed him, he would be by her side like a protector." "Okay." Li Xiaoyun chuckled. "At least you have a conscience." Smelling the faint sandalwood scent on Li Xiaoyun's body, Jing Yunzhao's head became heavier and heavier. Soon, she fell asleep, but it was rare that she did not dream. In the past, when she slept, she would usually brew some flower tea for herself to help her sleep better. Otherwise, she would dream of her past life, of her being in prison, or of Qiao Weiman's wretched eyes staring at her and groping her. Li Xiaoyun looked at her rare smile, and his gaze softened. He then rubbed his temples. His Zhao would have more people to love her in the future, but his life would not be so good. The old and young of the Su family were all smart people. Li Xiaoyun did not need to talk about the old man. He had used 2 or 3 years to get his approval. But in the future, there would be Su Yuantek and Su Wenqing. Su Yuantek used to be obsessed with his sister, but in the future, if he wanted to marry Zhao, he would have to go through Li Xiaoyun. It would be difficult. There was also Su Wenqing. Jing Yunzhao's second uncle was not to be trifled with. He was famous for being picky. When he thought about how Su Wenqing would pick on him in the future, he felt terrible. Fortunately, he did not have to worry about the Li family. Jing Yunzhao slept for a long time, even longer than before. When she woke up, the sky was already dark. Looking at the neon lights outside the window, she was a little dumbfounded. "How long has it been?" Jing Yunzhao was a little confused. "It's 2 in the morning now." Li Xiaoyun's lips twitched. When Jing Yunzhao heard that, her eyes widened. 2 in the morning? Then I slept for almost 20 hours? Li Xiaoyun nodded. "That's true. Then, you've been in this position?" Jing Yunzhao was suddenly very apologetic. "Your legs must be sore." right? Staying in the same position for 20 hours, he would not be able to sleep even if he closed his eyes. Moreover, they were in the car. She probably did not eat or drink. Otherwise, she would definitely wake up if he moved. Chapter 9:22. Jing Yunzhao looked at Li Xiaoyun with mixed feelings. Thinking back, she seemed to have been too cold to this man. It's okay. I used to hide in one place for 2 or 3 days when I was doing missions, relying on dew to survive. Now that I have a beauty in my arms, it couldn't be better. Li Xiaoyun glanced at her, then smiled. But what delicious food did you see in your dream? You smacked your lips many times. I didn't dream. Jing Yunzhao was immediately embarrassed. But you were talking in your sleep. Li Xiaoyun raised his eyebrows and said nonsense seriously. Impossible, what did I say? Jing Yunzhao was a little guilty. She used to sleep about 4 or 5 hours a day, and the longest was 6 hours. But this time, she almost slept for a day and a night. She really didn't know if she was talking in her sleep. You said, forget it, I don't want you to feel embarrassed. I won't tell you. Li Xiaoyun chuckled and said deliberately. After that, he got out of the car and went to the driver's seat. What did you say? Jing Yunzhao was a little curious. Well, it's a little straightforward. I'm a little embarrassed to hear it. Are you sure you want to hear it? Li Xiaoyun pursed his peach blossom eyes and shone with a teasing light. Jing Yunzhao pursed her lips. If it was in the past, she definitely wouldn't have believed it. But before she went to sleep, she was really grateful to Li Xiaoyun and was very moved. It was possible that her emotions were magnified when she was relaxed. Then I don't want to know. She felt even more guilty. The two found a 24-hour restaurant to replenish their energy. Then, Li Xiaoyun sent her to Old Master Su's place. Before that, Li Xiaoyun had already sent a text message to Su Xingyuan. In order to not disturb Jing Yunzhao's rest, Old Master Su and the others resisted contacting him. Old Master Su didn't feel good when he found out the result. However, the fact that his daughter was no longer around had existed for many years. Now that he confirmed that his granddaughter was back, it was also a happy thing. Moreover, Jing Yunzhao had received his goodwill and had been mentally prepared for so long. Now, he felt that he could accept it. At this time, seeing Jing Yunzhao again, it was obvious that she was different from before. Old Master Su's cloudy eyes were also filled with tears. Compared to his previous seriousness, he was now more humane. Li Xiaoyun couldn't help but sigh when he saw Old Man Su like this. This grandfather and grandson were really the same. Even Jing Yunzhao was gentler than before. Su. Jing Yunzhao was just about to speak when he paused for 2 seconds. Grandfather? Sigh. Jing Yunzhao was a little surprised by the old master's resounding reply. He then said, Girl, I've wronged you all these years. It's my fault. I should have recognized you earlier. Grandpa, I'm already satisfied, Jing Yunzhao said sincerely. She was no longer alone. She could also be filial to the old man legitimately and know that she was not born from a crack in a rock. Okay, Old Master Su said repeatedly. You've been away from home for so long. It's time to go back. Your first uncle will make some arrangements these 2 days, and your second uncle will also come back from abroad. When the time comes, we'll meet and talk about this meeting. The old man paused and suddenly snorted softly. I've already told them that you've been absent for 18 years, so those 2 fellows will have to compensate you for the past 18 years. No matter what valuable things they give you, you're not allowed to reject them. You have to take all of it. If it weren't for their connivance and concealment, allowing your mother to leave, you wouldn't have fallen to the outside world. Good girl, you don't have to be polite. And don't leave behind anything that should be compensated. Chapter 9:23. By the time the old man finished speaking, Jing Yunzhao was already sweating profusely. If she remembered correctly, the old man had always called her stinky brat. Wasn't his change in attitude a little too fast? But as for the 18-year gift, Jing Yunzhao was even more helpless. By the way, Grandpa, is second uncle married? She had always known a little more about Su Yuantek, but Su Wensheng rarely mentioned him. Him? Not yet. Your second uncle is very picky. He doesn't like ordinary women. Moreover, He only interacts with blonde women. The Su family's daughter-in-law can only be a domestic product. Even if he doesn't marry for the rest of his life, he can't bring back a foreign product, Grandpa Su said directly. Su Wenqing was in his early 30s. He wasn't very old, but he had achieved a lot. It was said that he ran a big company abroad and didn't lack money. Grandpa Su's temper was really bad. When Jing Yunzhao heard his words, she couldn't help but feel pity for her second uncle. However, Grandpa Su's request wasn't too much. Other than the country, he didn't ask for anything else. If a 1,000-year-old family like the Su family married a foreign daughter-in-law, it would mix up the bloodline, which wasn't very good. Moreover, Su Yuantek was in a high position, so the people around him should be as simple as possible. It was getting late, and Grandpa Su was also tired. After chatting for a while, he went to rest. Li Xiaoyan also left after sending Su Yuantek off. Jing Yunzhao thought about the scene during the day and felt a little sweet in her heart. At this time, some people in the Su family couldn't sleep. Shinshi tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. In the end, she sat up with a hua sound, her head full of cold sweat. Jing Yunzhao was indeed Su Xinlan's daughter. This was great. There was no place for her in the Su family. In another 2 days, Jing Yunzhao would enter the house. Her husband had already started preparing a room for Jing Yunzhao today. He even wanted her to personally pick out some daily necessities. Not only that, he even wanted her to prepare a gift. Although it was her husband who paid for it, she felt uncomfortable at the thought of having to personally choose something to give to Jing Yunzhao. However, it was fortunate that Su Xianlan was dead. Otherwise, if the mother and daughter came back together, Shunshi would have no status to speak of. Looking at the moonlight outside the window, Shunshi bit her lip. She didn't know how her son was living abroad. The thought that he might be suffering at this moment made her hate him even more. Yu was the young master of the Su family, but her husband didn't care about him at all. He even treated his niece better than him. Why? Gnashing his teeth, he spent the entire night until dawn. Madam, you don't look too good. Are you feeling unwell? Early in the morning, the maid was concerned. I'm fine. Shunshi's expression was normal. She took the newspaper and looked at it. Her hand paused, and her eyes turned cold. On the top of the newspaper, there was a notice about the donation for the banquet the night before. There was also a large page dedicated to Yunling medicine. Madam, you've met the person in charge of Yunling medicine, right? After the news spread yesterday, many people knew about this company. Our neighbor's child had a bad cold, so he went to buy medicine from this company. The effect was quite good. The maid said. Madam was usually very gentle and was very polite to the maids. Therefore, they didn't fear her and mostly respected her. As for Yunling medicine, it was very famous now. With the official publicity, it naturally received a lot of support. Chapter 9:24. When she heard the servant praising Yunling medicine, she immediately lost her appetite. She had no interest in eating breakfast, so she directly asked the servant to take the food away. I have something to ask you. Su Yuantek came downstairs. When he saw Shunshi, his eyes darkened and he said. Shunshi felt uncomfortable, but she still had a gentle smile on her face. She walked up to him and asked, Honey, what's the matter? Do you have any conflicts with Zhao? Su Yuantek asked directly. No, I don't. Yun Zhao misunderstood me. She was shopping with my father-in-law before, and I happened to have a headache so I didn't see it. She thought I saw it, so she has some opinions about me. Don't worry. When Yun Zhao comes, I will continue to explain to her. Shunshi said with a smile. No matter whether you two really don't get along with each other, I just hope that you will do your part in the future. If you can't treat her like your own daughter, then be polite. Zhao has suffered a lot these years, and she is Xinlan's only child. So I don't want her to be unhappy in our family. Do you understand? Su Yuantek stared at her and said. When he said this, Shunshi's face became more and more stiff. I know. I will definitely treat Yun Zhao well. Shunshi lowered her head. By the way, you offended Zhao before, didn't he? That's why I won't let him come back for this family banquet. After a few days, after he finishes his training, you have to teach him in advance that he absolutely cannot be unruly in front of his younger sister. If I find out that Zhao has been wronged by you and your mother, he will move out of this house. Su Yuanzi reminded again. Shun Shi's body trembled, and she continued to nod. She looked generous, and she didn't forget to take care of Su Yuantek's breakfast. Su Yuantek was very busy, but he tried to spare a lot of time to buy things in person. The Su family was very big. Not only Jing Yunjiao occasionally came back to live, but also Old Master, Su Xingyuan, and Su Wencheng would move in the future. Jing Yunjiao didn't tell anyone about this matter for the time being. She didn't mean to hide it, but even she was still a little confused. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. It happened to be the weekend, so she didn't have to ask for leave. In the morning, Su Yuanzi drove to a university to pick her up. I saw Jing leave in a car again today. This time the car was different, and it was a luxury car. But it was a middle-aged man. Who do you think it is? Baby Yao was curious. Of course, she didn't think that Jing Yunjiao had an improper relationship with that man. After all, they had known each other for a long time, so she knew Jing Yunjiao well. She just didn't understand why Jing Yunjiao was so mysterious. If you want to know, you can ask her when she comes back. She won't keep it a secret. What Tianxian knew Jing Yunjiao's temper, so she didn't care. Jing Yunjiao was dressed casually today. After all, it was her grandfather and uncle's home. She didn't feel the need to dress up. Otherwise, she would appear too polite. Zhao, don't be nervous when you get home. Uncle has prepared a room for you. You're welcome to come back anytime. I know that you offended you. When he comes back, I'll teach him a lesson and avenge you. If anyone has targeted you in the past, don't hesitate to tell me. The Su family will never be bullied. Su Yuantek said carefully in the car. I know, Uncle. Jing Yunjiao nodded. She tried to be as calm as possible. However, she was used to being cold. She didn't care when she had a breakdown, but now that she had adjusted her state of mind, she still looked sensible and steady. She didn't seem like a little girl. Chapter 9:25. Su Yuantek glanced at Jing Yunjiao through the rearview mirror and secretly shook his head. This niece of his seemed to be a little too sensible. At such a young age, she exuded a feeling of vicissitudes of life. Her cold temper was unlike anyone else's. Grandfather Su was stubborn and arrogant, so naturally, he wasn't cold. He and his second brother were considered tactful, and needless to say, Xianlan and Li Tianyi were both docile people. But thinking of this, another person suddenly flashed in Su Yuanzi's mind. Jing Wenyue, Grandfather Su's junior sister. It was said that although she wasn't cold and arrogant, she was firm and independent and decisive. Jing Yunjiao was somewhat similar to her in some aspects. Not long after, the car slowly entered the Su family's territory. The Su family's house occupied a large area and had a history of more than 100 years. It was filled with an elegant and simple charm. The location wasn't remote, but the surrounding scenery was good. It was like a paradise. The house was divided into a main building and an auxiliary building. The two auxiliary buildings combined with the scenery looked particularly comfortable. However, when they went to the Su family's house, Jing Yunjiao saw a house with the same layout and scale as the Su family's nearby. But because they weren't close, they couldn't see it very clearly. Eldest uncle, who owns the other house nearby? Jing Yunjiao still asked. That used to be the Jing family's old house. After the Li family took over, they moved to another place. Currently, there's no one there, Su Yuantek explained. In the past, the two families had a good relationship. Over the years, they tried to live together as much as possible. Jing Yunjiao nodded and didn't ask any more questions. The car passed through the dark forest and finally stopped in front of the Su family's villa. Jing Yunjiao got out of the car and entered the house. The Su family's servants were already waiting outside, standing neatly. In addition to those people, there was also Shen Shi, the old man, and a young man she had never seen before. The man had a smile on his face. He was dressed casually, and his eyes were bright under his sharp eyebrows. His facial features were handsome and elegant, but one look and one could tell that he was an extremely flamboyant and cunning man. This person should be her second uncle, Su Wencheng, whom she had never seen before. As soon as Jing Yunjiao got out of the car, Su Wencheng immediately walked over. He scanned Jing Yunjiao from head to toe, and his gaze stopped on her face as he said, As expected, the blood of the Su family flows in your veins. Your temperament is indeed different. Xiao Zhao, I'm your second uncle. Second uncle, Jing Yunzhao greeted. Su Wenqing nodded and exchanged glances with Su Yuantek. Only then did he lead Jing Yunzhao into the house. Su Yuantek and Su Wenqing were somewhat similar, but the latter was much younger, so he had an air of arrogance. Su Yuantek, on the other hand, was relatively smoother. One was like a round polished jade, and the other was like a sharp weapon. It had to be said that grandfather Su's two sons were very good. Jing Yunzhao passed by Shun Shi and glanced sideways at her. After 2 steps, she suddenly stopped. Aunt Shun, I didn't drink the wine you asked Aunt Tong to give me. Later, I heard that you took it back. Today is the day I go home. Why don't you take out the bottle of wine and let me have a taste? Jing Yunzhao said. The smile on Shun Shi's face froze when she heard the words, Aunt Shun. Yunzhao, logically speaking, I'm your aunt. Shun Shi said. But I feel that Aunt Shun is more intimate. Jing Yunzhao seemed to be smiling gently, but it made people feel cold in their hearts. Shun Shi secretly exerted more force. The corners of her mouth twitched, and then she said, Intimate is intimate, but it's a little against the rules. Chapter 9:26. Shun Shi cursed in her heart. Jing Yunzhao obviously knew that she cared about the position of the mayor's wife, so he deliberately called her Aunt Shun. If this form of address were to be heard by others, they might think that her position was unstable. Uncle, I suddenly have too many relatives, and I can't accept it all at once. Can I call her Aunt Shun for the time being? Jing Yunzhao looked directly at Su Yuantek. Previously, she didn't know that she was the granddaughter of the Su family, so Shun Shi's identity as Su Yuantek's wife was not a problem to her. But now, it was different. Su Yuantek was her uncle, and she would not allow such a woman to pollute the Su family. Although her niece was just an outsider, Shun Shi had attacked her many times. This hatred and resentment could not be resolved just because they became a family. Su Yuantek frowned slightly, thought for a moment, and rubbed Jing Yunzhao's head. Just call her what you like. Okay. Jing Yunzhao responded with a smile. Even though she was still polite, it still made Su Yuan's heart quite happy. He only heard Jing Yunzhao raise her eyebrows and ask, Annie Shin, you don't have any objections now? Your uncle said so, so I have no objections. If you want to call her Aunt Shin, just call her Aunt Shin. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Shun Shi laughed dryly. These words were nothing more than reminding Jing Yunzhao that her identity would not change because of Jing Yunzhao's address. Jing Yunzhao's eyes were cold as she entered the house. There was a hint of fragrance in the room. It was probably because someone had specially used incense to smoke the things in the house. The fragrance was light, elegant, and not too strong. It had the smell of green grass, making one feel comfortable. It could also be seen that the things in the room were almost new, and the colors were relatively bright, which made it feel warm. A group of people sat down, with Grandpa Shin in the middle. The servant first served a plate of fruit and tea. Zhao, in the future, you and Grandpa Shin will live in the main building. You, Aunt Shun, and I will live in the side building on the left, and your uncle will live on the right. Of course, when you go home, you will come to the main building to eat together. Do you think that's okay? Su Yuantek asked. The house was big enough for the whole family to live in the main building. However, the old man liked peace and quiet, and the two brothers were busy people. They would have to entertain guests on a regular basis, so it was better for them to live separately. Fortunately, the main building and the side building were not far, so it was more suitable. Okay. Jing Yunzhao nodded. Su Yuantek put the key in Jing Yunzhao's hand. The Grandpa Shin said that you know how to make medicine. In the future, you can use it as you wish. I will prohibit other people from entering and leaving. In addition, there are several large storerooms in the backyard, in which there are medicinal herbs and seeds. If you lack anything, you can go there and get it. This is the key. The storeroom was a little different from the basement. There was a lot of wine and finished medicine in the basement, but they were not too expensive. Compared with those, the Su family cared more about the things in the storeroom because there was no lack of rare medicinal herbs. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the Grandpa Shin's lifeblood. In the whole Su family, only Grandpa Shin and Su Yuantek, who was in charge of the pharmacy, had the key. Usually, no one was allowed to go near it. She had been in the Su family for so many years, but she had only entered the basement and the wine cellar. Thank you, uncle. Jing Yunjiao did not refuse and directly accepted it. If she did not have the blood of the Su family, it would be fine. But since she had half the blood of the Su family, she was qualified to inherit everything from Grandpa Shun. She was not ambitious, but when it came to making medicine, she could not tolerate those things being insulted by those who did not understand it. Of course, she was not referring to her two uncles, but the only grandson of the Su family, Su Yu. Chapter 9:27. Her grandfather was getting on in years, and her first and second uncles were in politics and business respectively. They did not have much interest in medicine making. There were only two juniors in the Su family, and that was her and Su Yu. In the end, only the two of them would bear the burden of the medicine room. She would not fight with Su Yu for anything else, but she would not give up the hard work of the old master and her ancestors. When Jing Yunjiao took the key, Shunshi's heart almost stopped beating. When Su Yu was still young, she had encouraged her son to ask her husband about it, so she had a rough idea of what was in the medicine storage. Indeed, it was filled with medicinal herbs, but there were also some rare treasures that were passed down from their ancestors. The Su family had been making medicine for thousands of years, and their ability to collect medicinal herbs was also the best in the world. Whether it was flying in the sky or swimming in the sea, even pearls and gemstones, as long as it could be used in medicine, they would definitely have it. She was about to go crazy with hatred. Those things belonged to the Su family. For so many years, she hadn't had any ideas about those things, mainly because the Su family only had one child, and that was her grandfather's eldest grandson. Even if the grandfather didn't like him, he would definitely inherit the family business in the future. Those things would naturally belong to her son. But now, this Cheng Yaojin had appeared out of nowhere. Jing Yunjiao. What right did he have? He was a little bastard born of a woman who eloped with another man. What right did he have to return to the Su family to fight for the inheritance? However, she could only think these thoughts in her heart. She didn't dare to say them out loud in front of her grandfather and everyone else. Little girl, the things in the medicine storage will be yours in the future. I'm old, and these things have been passed down for so many generations. It's time for the younger generation to guard them, her grandfather said again. His meaning was obvious. Grandfather, I'll keep these things for you for the time being. In the future, when my eldest and second uncles find a suitable successor who can take on the Su family's ability to make medicine, I'll return these things, Jing Yunjiao said. These words were even more straightforward. She directly told everyone that in her heart, her cousin Su Yu didn't have the ability to make medicine. Su Yu's personality wasn't suitable for it. The old man knew that if Jing Yunjiao was Li Tianyi's child, then her surname and bloodline were destined to involve the three families in the future. The Su family and the Jing family had a 1,000-year friendship, so he didn't want the Jing family to have no successors in the future. Therefore, he didn't say anything too definite. At least for now, he still had two sons. In the future, there might still be successors. However, he was afraid that he would be getting older and older by then, and he would definitely not be able to teach them well. Fortunately, he still had this granddaughter who could help him when the time came. However, just like when Jing Wanyue took in a son-in-law, if Jing Yunjiao openly inherited the Jing family's reputation, then she also had the responsibility to carry on the Jing family's ancestral line. The Li family's status was not simple, so they might not agree. The old man sighed softly. This girl would have a lot of troubles in the future. Let's take it one step at a time. He had indeed thought too much about this matter. Jing Yunjiao openly accepted the key, but her two uncles looked satisfied. Xiao Zhao, I heard from Dad that you used to have adoptive parents, but they later broke off contact. What happened? Su Wenqing asked with an inquisitive look. I lived with my adoptive parents until I was 15. Later, my adoptive mother fell ill and died. I coincidentally found out that they weren't my biological parents. In addition, my adoptive father wasn't very reliable, so I broke off contact with them, Jing Yunjiao said casually, as if she had forgotten the hardships of the past. Su Wenqing heard this and knew that there was something fishy about it. However, since she didn't want to talk about it, he didn't ask too much. However, this matter was still easy to investigate. If he found out that the family didn't treat little Zhao well, humph. Chapter 9:28. Jing Yun Zhao sighed in her heart. Even though she had only just met these two uncles, they were really good to her from the bottom of their hearts. It was impossible to pretend. Zhao, you just came home, so I don't have anything to give you. I went to the jade store to pick out these bracelets. Jade is good for people, so take them and play with them. After chatting for a while, Su Yuantek took out a box and handed it over. There was a pair of bracelets. They were purple in color and not very wide. They were also decorated with beautiful and anti-collision silver patterns on the outside. They looked different from the rest. Although she didn't know much about jade, she still had the memory of the spirit jade. Therefore, she knew that this violet jade was divided into several colors. The one in her hand should be expensive because its hue was uniform and high saturation. It wasn't like other purple jade bracelets that had a bit of red or blue, or even different shades of blue. Jing Yunzhao's eyes flashed with surprise, but Su Wenqing had already said, "Big brother, you are so poor, but I didn't expect you to be so generous. This is royal purple, the best violet jade. Xiao Zhao is young, so the green color is a little old-fashioned. Purple is just right, and purple symbolizes good fortune and nobility. It has a good meaning, so it's not bad. Since you said it's not bad, then it seems that the things I chose are really good." Su Yuantek raised his eyebrows. His younger brother had been very picky since he was young. There were problems all over his body. Whether it was clothing, food, housing, or transportation, he was extremely strict, even to the people around him. Fortunately, they were living in separate buildings now. Otherwise, he would be annoyed to death by this brat. Today is Xiao Zhao's first day back. I will give her face and not be picky. Su Wenqing snorted and raised his hand to take out his gift. It was a document. Jing Yunzhao was a little suspicious. When she opened it, the corner of her mouth twitched. This is the share transfer contract of several companies in and out of our country. Xiao Zhao, you are my precious niece. You can lack anything, but you definitely won't lack money. Su Wenqing smiled arrogantly. Su Yuantek's face twitched and he rubbed his eyebrows. The Su family's assets belonged to Old Master Su, so he wouldn't touch them. As for himself, he was still considered an honest and upright official, so naturally, he couldn't be compared to this kind of nouveau riche. Jing Yunzhao was dumbfounded. How did his assets increase so much in the blink of an eye? Zhao, don't worry about it. Back then, he was also in need of money, but the old man didn't care. It was I who took your mother's money to make up for it. Otherwise, where would he get the ability he has today? Su Yuantek directly attacked. Jing Yunzhao picked up the information and looked at it. Su Wenqing's businesses were all over the world, including the technology development industry, real estate, food, and so on. It was simply a big group. What her second uncle gave her was a portion of the shares. He was only responsible for getting the money and didn't need her to manage it. However, it was a little troublesome for her. Although first uncle's greeting gift was expensive, it was just an object. However, the shares of the company were different. The gift was too big. Second uncle didn't have a family now, but what if he did in the future? At that time, this niece of hers would be a little too ostentatious. Although old Master Su asked her to keep it, she could rely on herself if she lacked money. Second uncle, I won't sign this contract. I don't lack money. Moreover, if I lack money, I will earn it myself. If I don't work hard for it, I won't feel at ease holding it. Jing Yunzhao pushed the document back. When she said this, Su Yuantek's lips curled up. He was already so old, but he was gloating. Su Wenqing was stunned. Was he being despised? Chapter 9:29. Su Yuanqing's movements stiffened. Feeling his elder brother's mocking gaze, he immediately glared back. Xiao Zhao, as elder brother said, part of the money I used to start the company was left by my sister, so naturally, it's yours. It's natural for you to take these shares. You don't have to feel pressured. Yuanqing, I thought you would take out something good, so it's just shares. Although they're valuable, you can't do anything if Zhao doesn't accept them. Besides, do you think you're the only one who knows how to start a company and make money? Do you know what her identity was when I first met her? Su Yuantek laughed and said proudly. His younger brother had been proud since he was young. When he was young, he studied better than others. He ate better than others. When he made money, he had higher expectations. As time passed, he became more and more like a local tycoon. What identity? Su Wenqing was stunned for a moment. He shifted his body and sat up straight. Hee. Although you started your business when you were in university, you're still not as good as Zhao. She's now the chairman of Yunling Medicine. This company is amazing. The military is backing her. The first batch of medicine for Yunling Medicine was ordered by the military. If you want to compare money, when she reaches your age, her achievements will be many times more than yours. Su Yuantek took a sip of tea. His face was glowing. When he didn't know who the owner of Yunling Medicine was, he was worried that someone was using the military's name to do something improper. This medicine was related to the people's livelihood. If something went wrong, it would be very serious. However, now that he knew it was Jing Yuanzhao, he was relieved. If she tampered with the medicine, the old master would be the first to disagree. Therefore, it was impossible. When Su Wenqing heard this, he was indeed shocked. He looked at Jing Yuanzhao with a strange expression. This niece of his seemed to be a little abnormal. He started his business from scratch. Naturally, he knew how hard it was. Ordinary people couldn't do this. Moreover, he took a lot of convenient paths in the past. After all, he was a member of the Su family. He had ready-made connections in all aspects and sufficient capital to start his business. He didn't have to worry about failure at all. However, how could Jing Yuanzhao be the same? She had led a wandering life since she was a child. Although she had the protection of the old master for the past 2 years, the old master had concealed his identity and lived a peaceful life. In this aspect, he could not help her at all. Originally, he had treated his niece as a child. He felt that a little girl should be doted on. Now, he had to think of a way to compensate her for the suffering she had suffered over the past 10 years. But looking at it now, this niece had already become an adult, and they, the elders, seemed to have come a little late. However, at this moment, he liked this cold and indifferent niece even more. She was simply a treasure. Forget it. I'll just take it that I made the wrong decision this time, Su Wenqing said. After that, he felt the old man's burning gaze and felt guilty. He thought for a moment and took out a car key. This is the car I just bought. I just shipped it back to China. You're almost an adult, so it's suitable for you to drive. He had just bought this car because he was very fond of it. It was a limited edition car with only 20 cars in the world. He had done everything he could to get his hands on it. Money wasn't a problem. The problem was that he couldn't buy this car with money. This car cost more than 20 million. It was brand new, and he hadn't even had the time to drive it. Jing Yuanzhao didn't think too much about it. She had just rejected the shares. It wouldn't be good if she opened her mouth to reject it now. After thinking about it, she nodded and kept it. As the eldest, Su Yuantek naturally knew what kind of car it was. When he saw his younger brother's deflated face, he was in a good mood. The other gifts are in your room. Go back and take your time to look at them. It's late now. Let's eat. Chapter 9:30. After chatting for so long, Jing Yuanzhao was indeed hungry. However, before eating, Jing Yuanzhao went upstairs to take a look at her room. The room was very big, but it was filled with gifts. She was stunned. It was almost stuffed with plush dolls. In addition, there were all kinds of skincare products, branded bags, shoes, clothes, jewelry. Looking at the situation, she probably wouldn't need to buy new things for many years to come. She was shocked and touched at the same time. Although she might not like all the things here, they were gifts from her family. It meant a lot. When she was in the Qiao family, she had seen Xiao Hongye receiving gifts many times. Only now did she realize that it was indeed a happy feeling. How is it? Do you like everything? Su Wenqing walked up and rubbed Jing Yuanzhao's head. These two uncles seemed to have a special fondness for her head. The two of them had rubbed it a few times. I like it. Thank you, uncle, Jing Yuanzhao said. It's a pity that you've grown up. Otherwise, uncle can give you more things. Su Wenqing felt that it was a pity. He really wanted to see what this niece looked like when she was young. Looking at her serious appearance, She must have been a little pink dumpling who knew how to act cool when she was young. She must have been very cute. Second uncle can give birth to one himself. Jing Yunjiao smiled. How can it be the same as you? Oh, right. Do you have pictures of your childhood? Let me see if you were beautiful when you were young. Su Wenqing said. Pictures? Jing Yunjiao shook her head. She didn't have such things. However, after her rebirth, she took some pictures. Most of them were taken when she was teaching Shao Haiqing and the others martial arts. The rest were taken when she was training at the military training base. When I was young, I wasn't good looking. The neighbors would say that I was a silly girl. My hair was yellow, my complexion wasn't good, and I was very skinny. If uncle saw me, he would definitely be very disappointed. Jing Yunjiao was telling the truth. She was only praised for her beauty after she was reborn. With the space, her skin turned from sallow to fair, and her body became slightly more fleshy, which made her look a little more normal. Su Wenqing frowned slightly. When Jing Yunjiao was about to go downstairs, he grabbed her arm and said, Xiao Zhao, how much have you suffered in the past? Did that family bully you? Uncle can avenge you. Second uncle, it's been a long time. You may not know, but after my adoptive mother passed away, the family's situation became worse and worse. In the end, the younger sister of the family lost her reputation and ran away with the money. My adoptive father fell into a deep ditch because he was chasing after the money, and his legs were crippled. Now, even living is a problem. Jing Yunjiao smiled brightly. In other words, she had already stood up for him. Is that so? Su Wenqing loosened his grip. Is it your doing? If there is, I can only say, well done. Su Wenqing suddenly smiled and gave her a thumbs up. As he said this, he reached out to grab Jing Yunjiao's shoulder and went downstairs. He earnestly lectured, if you're bullied, you have to fight back like this. However, don't be so loud that others can use it against you. Learn more sinister moves, just like how you hit people. What's the use of stupidly hitting the stomach and butt? If you want to hit someone, then poke their eyes, dig their nose, and kick them down the road. Once these 3 moves are used, regardless of whether they're a man or a woman, I guarantee that they'll immediately surrender. It doesn't matter if you learn bad things. No matter how bad you are, you're still much better than that brat Suyu. Uncle will always side with you, haha. The corner of Jing Yunjiao's mouth twitched. She seemed to have discovered this second uncle's amazing side. Uncle, when you hit people, you use these 3 moves? Jing Yunjiao pursed her lips and smiled. After we finish eating, Uncle will teach you some self-defense skills. Our Xiao Zhao is so beautiful. How can you not know how to protect yourself? Su Wenqing continued to ramble on, his face full of confidence. Chapter 931. When Jing Yunjiao heard that he wanted to teach him self-defense, he immediately smiled. He thought about it and didn't tell the truth. Okay, I'll practice with Uncle later. But Uncle, I'm strong. If I hurt you or bump into you, you won't blame me, right? When he said this, Su Wenqing immediately glared at him. Am I such a petty person? Besides, how can you hurt me with your small arms and legs? Su Wenqing smiled and said, our Su family has a set of health-preserving moves. Your grandfather and eldest uncle also know how to use this move. If you practice it for a long time, not only can it strengthen your body, but it can also protect yourself. Although it's a little difficult to deal with a martial artist, it's definitely not a problem for 2 or 3 ordinary people. Jing Yunjiao nodded. His eyes shone brightly, and the corners of his mouth were slightly pursed with a smile, looking somewhat mysterious. Su Wenqing didn't care. He patted her shoulder and went downstairs to eat. This was Jing Yunjiao's first meal after he was acknowledged by his family. Naturally, it was very sumptuous. The old man sat at the head of the table, with Su Xingyuan and Jing Yunjiao on his left and right respectively. The 2 biological sons, Su Yuantek and Su Wenqing, sat at the back. However, it wasn't difficult to understand. Su Xingyuan was not only the old man's disciple, but he was more than his biological son. He was filial and loyal. No matter when and where, he would follow the old man's wishes. Others simply couldn't be like him. At the dinner table, it was a happy and harmonious atmosphere. Shen Shi sat next to Su Yuantek and looked at the doted Jing Yunjiao with a stiff smile. Sure enough, She should have dealt with her before she returned to the Jing family. Now, she was in a passive position and couldn't do anything to her in front of so many people. But to let her watch Jing Yunjiao enjoy everything that belonged to her son, she couldn't do it. Yuanza, if Yuer finds out that he has a cousin, he will be very happy. Do you want to? She asked tentatively. Zhao, is this dish to your liking? Su Yuantek asked Jing Yunjiao casually as if he didn't hear him. Not bad. Jing Yunjiao nodded. He looked at Shi and said, Aunt Shin, where is the bottle of wine you wanted to give me? Shi paused. You mean that bottle of flower wine? When I brought it back, I accidentally dropped it. How about this, Yunjiao? If you want a drink, I will ask someone to go to the wine cellar and get a bottle of other wine. We have a lot of new fruit wine at home, and the taste is very good. She quickly smiled and said, of course, she had already destroyed the bottle of poisoned wine. Could it be that she wanted to keep it as evidence? Aunt Shun, you are too careless. Jing Yunjiao said casually. He picked up some vegetables for the old man and continued, although I am young, I also know that things that have been given out are like water that has been spilled. According to reason, you shouldn't ask for it back. By the way, fortunately, we didn't drink this bottle of wine at that time. Otherwise, if Aunt Shin regretted it, we wouldn't be able to return it. Yunjiao, what are you talking about? I knew that you didn't drink it, so I asked for it back. I didn't feel embarrassed when I asked my sister. If it were you girls, I definitely wouldn't have done so. At this point, she suddenly understood why Jing Yunjiao was so against her. She had been with the old man for so long, so her pharmaceutical skills were definitely not low. She mentioned the wine so many times because she found out that the things she gave out were poisoned, and it wasn't just because of that one time at the mall. If that was the case, she was afraid that she couldn't casually make a move in the future. If Jing Yunjiao had real evidence, she would naturally not be able to stay in the Su family. Chapter 932. Shinshi's mind was full of twists and turns. She thought of many things in a few seconds. After a while, her eyes suddenly became particularly gentle and kind, as if she really loved Jing Yunjiao. Hubby, I just thought about it. Yunjiao's birthday is coming soon, right? Why don't we hold a banquet and invite her friends and classmates together? What do you think? Shinshi asked. No one knew when Jing Yunjiao's birthday was, but it was less than a month before Jing Yunjiao's 18th birthday, which happened to be during the winter vacation. Zhao, I think your Aunt Shin's idea is good. What do you think? Su Yuantek nodded in agreement and asked Jing Yunjiao. Jing Yunjiao was a little suspicious. Shinshi suddenly seemed to have some changes, but he didn't know the reason. I think it's settled. Little girl, invite your friends and classmates to come over and make it more lively. Before Jing Yunjiao could speak, the old man had already finalized the matter. Jing Yunjiao thought for a while and nodded. After all, recognizing relatives was a joyous event. Naturally, it was best for everyone to know about it. But Dad, once the birthday banquet is held, I'm afraid that the Li family will also know. Su Yuantek reminded. It was unknown whether Jing Yunjiao had Li Tianyi's blood flowing in her body, but it was certainly 80 or 90%. Once the Li family knew about her existence, it might not be a good attitude, especially when Jing Yunjiao coincidentally had the surname Jing, which would make the Li family even more unhappy. So what if they know? This girl is my granddaughter. Even if she is Li Wenba's granddaughter, Li Wenba can't control her just because of her surname. Humph, that old thing has slept soundly for so many years. It's time for him to have some nightmares. The old man snorted and his temper suddenly rose. By the way, Xiao Zhao, was your name given by your adoptive parents? Su Wenqing asked. I heard that my adoptive mother asked a fortune teller to give it to me. The surname was given from the jade token on my body. Jing Yunjiao answered truthfully. This jade token looked very old and dim. No matter how you looked at it, it looked fake. Because of this, the Qiao family didn't shift their attention to the jade token. Otherwise, it would have been sold long ago. Where's the jade token? Is this the one you wear around your neck? The old man pointed at her collar and asked. He had long seen Jing Yunjiao wearing something, but he never cared. Usually, he couldn't see it with her clothes. Jing Yunjiao took out the jade pendant from her clothes. When the old man saw it, he suddenly laughed. This is fate. Little girl, Look at this jade token. Grandfather? Jing Yunjiao didn't understand the old man's attitude. There were originally two jade tokens, one for the Su family and one for the Su family. They weren't a pair, but they were a symbol passed down from generation to generation. Each family's surname was engraved on it. However, our Su family's jade token was smashed several hundred years ago. It is said that after the jade token was smashed, several generations of the Su family didn't live long. Moreover, they didn't have many descendants. Therefore, the jade token is very important to the Jing family. The previous generation mentioned that this jade token will only recognize the Su and Jing families as its owners. Even if an outsider obtains it, it won't last long. Our ancestors also said that if a person with great luck carries this jade token, he will be able to transform into a dragon. He will be able to revitalize the family and revitalize medical knowledge. However, regarding this luck, over the years, no one has been able to understand it. They just treated it as a rumor. Now it seems. The old man glanced at Jing Yunjiao and smiled. Chapter 933. The old man's words startled Jing Yunjiao. She suddenly remembered the scene when she first entered the space. Her luck was probably referring to her rebirth. After all, there were very few people in the world who could be as lucky as her. At this time, the old man was overjoyed, but there were still some things in his heart that he didn't say. The advantages of Jing Yunjiao's surname were great. With the Su family as her backing, if she really faced the Li family in the future, her chances of winning would be higher. Even if Jing Yunjiao didn't say anything, there would be people who were once loyal to the Jing family who would take the initiative to do things for her. Since the old man was happy, Jing Yunjiao's mood was naturally good as well. She stuffed the jade tablet back. After the meal, she became more familiar with her two uncles. After all, blood was thicker than water. Jing Yunjiao quickly integrated with them. Xiao Zhao, come here. I'll teach you. After the meal, Su Wenqing didn't forget his promise to Jing Yunjiao. He stood in the courtyard and waved at her. Jing Yunjiao blushed with shame. Looking at her second uncle's excited appearance, she really didn't want to tell the truth. Moreover, even if she said it, her second uncle would definitely not believe her. As soon as Jing Yunjiao approached, Su Wenqing immediately pulled her over. Xiao Zhao, your body is so thin. You can't use brute force in a fight, but you can't just focus on scratching either. You have to learn how to use both. Su Wenqing seriously continued. For example, if someone covers your mouth and nose from behind, don't panic. You're a girl, so you can't escape with your fists. I'll teach you a few moves. First, bend the fingers against the opponent's joints. Use as much strength as you can and don't be soft. Second, if you can see the opponent's feet, you can kick their toes. Third, if your body size is too different from the opponent's and you can't grab their hair or neck, use your elbow. Su Wenqing's explanation seemed to be very reasonable. Jing Yunjiao listened and couldn't help but want to laugh. These seemed to be shameless moves. If it were her, not to mention that the possibility of being ambushed from behind was very small, even if her mouth and nose were covered, she only needed to grab the other party's arm and throw them to the ground. However, it had to be said that the methods he mentioned might have some effect on ordinary people. It was a pity that he neglected one possibility, and that was whether the other party would be carrying a sharp weapon while covering their mouths and noses. Later, I'll ask Big Brother to prepare a few bodyguards for you. But as the saying goes, it's better to rely on yourself than on others. First, learn a few moves from me. If you can withstand it, Uncle will send you to a proper martial arts school. Su Wenqing continued to speak and did not forget to remind him of the moves. Jing Yunjiao shook his head. All right, let's practice the actual combat. After a while, Su Wenqing began to urge again. After saying that, he stood behind Jing Yunjiao and pressed his hand against her mouth and nose. Jing Yunjiao felt a little helpless. Uncle, are we really going to do it? Of course. Don't worry, Uncle is a big man. You've just learned, so this little strength can't hurt me. Su Wenqing smiled, looking particularly generous. Jing Yunjiao really didn't know how he founded the company. On the surface, although he looked like a man who was vigorous and resolute, in private, he was actually so unreliable. All right, Uncle, you should be mentally prepared. Jing Yunjiao kindly reminded him. Su Wenqing didn't take it to heart at all. Although he was teaching his niece self-defense skills, in fact, he just wanted to be more familiar with her, so that this little girl wouldn't be cold when she saw him. It wasn't good to be too polite to family members. Chapter 934. Su Wenqing steadied himself and increased the strength in his hands. Jing Yunjiao glanced to the side and glanced at his arm. In the next second, she took a step forward and grabbed his arm. She spun him 180 degrees and threw him in front of her. With a bang, the greenery on the lawn withered a little under the pressure. Su Wenqing's back was facing the lawn, and he felt his entire back go numb. He gritted his teeth and supported his waist as he climbed up from the ground. He said, "Xiao Zhao, your strength is great. It's more useful than what I taught you." On the side, Su Xingwen looked at Su Wenqing with disdain. Teaching martial arts? He really didn't know who was teaching who. This second young master was too indecent. He was like this in the past. He looked steady and mature on the outside, but as soon as he got home, he would start messing around. "Uncle, does it hurt?" Jing Yunjiao's eyes sparkled. She couldn't help but smile, revealing a row of small white teeth. "It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. Again, this move is better. Practice more." Su Wenqing dusted his clothes. He was already 30 years old, but he still looked like a big boy. "Uncle, forget it. I know martial arts. I don't need to be taught at all." Jing Yunjiao spoke the truth. How could Su Wenqing believe her? His niece was only 18 years old. It was already very impressive that she could run a company. Moreover, she was learning medicine from the old man. If she also knew martial arts, wouldn't she be a monster? Even if she was a genius, it was impossible for her to be so abnormal. Moreover, who did she learn martial arts from in that small county? The old man didn't have the ability to teach her. "You know martial arts? Okay, uncle will spar with you," Su Wenqing said dotingly. Jing Yunjiao shook her head. "Don't spar with me. I'll really hurt you." What she learned were all fierce moves that could suppress people. They were orthodox martial arts, not the flowery moves of today. "You're really not modest." Su Wenqing couldn't help but laugh. He took off his jacket and threw it aside. He opened his hand and struck a pose. He looked very handsome. Su Wenqing did know some martial arts, but he wasn't very skilled. Fortunately, he had the looks, and his aura wasn't weak. When he got serious, he looked a little murderous. "Yuanqing, if you can't even win against Zhao, go on a blind date tomorrow. If you win, I won't care about you in the future. What do you think?" Su Yuantek stood at the side and spoke without feeling any pain. Although he didn't know what Jing Yunjiao was capable of, he had noticed the look in Su Xingyuan's eyes. He had lived for many more years than his younger brother, so he definitely understood Su Xingyuan's facial expressions better. "Xiao Zhao, did you hear that?" Su Wenqing didn't care at all. Jing Yunjiao smiled. "Second uncle, you're already so old. It's time for you to find someone. So, don't be sad if you lose. I'm just thinking for you." Second uncle was picky and couldn't stand women. It was time to change. Otherwise, wouldn't this male chauvinist have to be single for the rest of his life? Su Wenqing was even happier in his heart. Seeing Jing Yunjiao's confident look, he took the initiative to step forward. However, he didn't dare to move too much and held back his strength. Bang! However, in less than a second, his whole body fell to the ground again. Su Wenqing was stunned. "Wait, I went easy on you just now. Let's do it again." This time, he used 80% of his strength. He lifted his leg and swept it over. However, just like before, he didn't see how Jing Yunjiao attacked. He ate a mouthful of mud and instantly felt terrible. Su Wenqing loved cleanliness very much. At this time, he only felt that every pore on his body was about to explode. He almost jumped up from the ground and looked at Jing Yunjiao suspiciously. He thought for a while and said, "Let's do it again." But, "Xiao Zhao, slow down." Su Wenqing's eyes were serious and he felt very guilty. Chapter 935. When Su Yuantek saw Su Wenqing's cowardly appearance, he instantly burst into laughter. He pointed at him and gloated, "Zhao, your second uncle is in good health. You don't have to be merciful." Hit him a few more times to teach him a lesson. Let's see if he dares to look down on you again in the future." Speaking of his younger brother, Su Yuantek was also full of joy at this time. Instead of calling him his younger brother, this kid was more like his son. When he was young, he was very obedient and followed him and Xianlan all day long. However, ever since Xianlan disappeared, his temperament changed completely. Every time at home, he would be a little sloppy. He was picky and dissatisfied with everything. He also began to learn to scheme against him. However, it wasn't until today that he seemed to feel that the real Su Wenqing had returned. This younger brother should feel even more guilty towards Xianlan. Originally, he didn't agree to let Xianlan and Li Tianyi leave. However, Yuanqing liked Li Tianyi very much and kept pleading for him. He even pretended to know nothing in front of the old man. At that time, this younger brother had always been a little proud in his heart. He felt that he had helped his sister achieve happiness. It wasn't until he never saw Xianlan again, and until the old man blamed him and his brother for his resentment, that the younger brother felt that he had done something wrong. The appearance of Jing Yunzhao was like a savior to this younger brother. Otherwise, he was sure that he would never be able to see Su Wenqing smile like this at this time. At this moment, Su Wenqing looked as if he had seen a ghost. He continued to move forward recklessly. Jing Yunzhao casually threw him to the ground. He looked at Jing Yunzhao with shock and pride. "Who did you learn martial arts from?" Although Su Wenqing fell miserably, he didn't feel ashamed. "Before I met Grandpa, I had a master who taught me medical skills, martial arts, and medicine. However, my master is no longer here," Jing Yunzhao said. She had promised the old ancestor in the space that she would never reveal the existence of the space. No matter who it was, she would keep her promise. Moreover, she remembered that the ancestor had said that anyone who could enter the space would definitely have the blood of the Jing family flowing through their veins. Therefore, she should be Li Tianyi's daughter without a doubt. Since this jade was a family heirloom, it would naturally be the same in the future. It would be passed down from generation to generation. Perhaps she could even meet a descendant of the Jing family with heaven-defying luck. Su Wenqing was a little surprised. "You're lucky to have met a legendary expert." It was like the plot of a television show. However, although luck was one aspect, the most important thing should still be character. If it was Su Yu, even if there was a hermit expert, it would still be impossible for him to become a talent. At this time, Jing Yunzhao had changed from being the one being taught to second uncle's little master. Instead, she had given him pointers for quite a while. Since it was the weekend, Jing Yunzhao decided to stay at home as well. The atmosphere made her feel like she was in a dream. Of course, as long as she saw Shanxi, Jing Yunzhao would wake up a lot. However, she didn't know if Shanxi's brain was damaged, but she seemed to suddenly become very reasonable. She was even more concerned about her, especially in front of the whole family. There was no evidence for the poisoning at that time. Otherwise, Jing Yunzhao wouldn't have concealed it. At noon the next day, the old man took a nap. Su Yuantek had official business to attend to, and Su Wenqing was willing to accept his loss and go on a blind date. Shenxi unexpectedly came to the main building again. "Yunzhao, come and try the afternoon tea made by Aunt. Also, these snacks were all made by me," Shenxi politely said while holding a plate of things. If it weren't for the past reminding her, Jing Yunzhao would even have the illusion that she had a good relationship with Shenxi. Chapter 936. Shenxi put down the things and even personally brought the teacup to Jing Yunzhao. The tea was fragrant, and there was nothing wrong with it. The same went for the desserts. Everything was normal. This was the Su family. Shenxi wouldn't be so stupid as to use poison again. "Aunt Shun, you're so thoughtful. I thought you would have something to ask of me." Jing Yunzhao's expression was normal. "You're just a child. Why would I ask you for anything?" Shenxi laughed. "But I do have something to ask your opinion about. For the birthday party, do you want to go to the hotel, or do you want to have it in our house? I think our place is big enough. It's more magnificent than a hotel. The scenery is good, so everything is suitable. Although it's a bit troublesome, it's definitely more meaningful. What do you think?" "Okay." Jing Yunzhao nodded. "That's good. Also, here are a few types of cakes. See if there's anything you like. Oh right, there's also the clothes. When the time comes, You have to prepare the gown you'll be wearing. Yun Zhao, you're so good looking, much better than the daughters of other rich families. There are many styles you can wear. She did not forget to praise her. This hypocritical look was as if she had been possessed. It came inexplicably. However, it had to be said that Xi's acting skills seemed to be better than her sister's. Even her eyes were full of love. Coupled with her amiable face, she was simply impeccable. Aunt Shan, how about I tell you something? Jing Yunzhao put down the things in her hands and said coldly, Okay, Yunzhao. Aunt is listening. She was still full of smiles. When I first came to the capital, there was a time when I was on a bus and the driver injected a dangerous drug into my car. Luckily, I reacted quickly and controlled it. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Do you think this is just a coincidence? Jing Yunzhao revealed a cold smile. She couldn't figure it out before. She had encountered a lot of danger, and it was never for no reason. At that time, she clearly felt danger, but she didn't know where the danger came from. However, after Shanxi appeared, she had an intuition. Yunzhao, have you ever encountered such a thing? Shinshi was surprised and worried. You must have been scared at that time, right? Go back and tell your uncle to give that bus driver a warning. How did Annie Shin know that it was a bus? Jing Yunzhao suddenly narrowed his eyes. Didn't you say you were injected with drugs? It's just that there are too many people on the bus. Shunshi explained naturally, but I didn't say that the drug acted up immediately. Moreover, they only said that the driver was injected with dangerous drugs. They didn't say that he was injected by someone. Aunt Shun, how can you guess so accurately? Jing Yunzhao said with a faint smile. Shinshi sighed. Yunzhao, do you think Annie Shun is a bad person? Auntie knows that you've suffered all these years. Auntie won't look down on you because of this and think that you're a wild girl. Auntie only has one child, your cousin, and I don't have a daughter. Now that I have you, I'll treat you like my own daughter. By the way, your mother and I were as close as sisters back then. Even if it's just for your mother's sake, I'll still treat you well. Shinshi said sincerely. If she hadn't doubted this woman before, she would have been touched. However, once she had set her mind on something, it was not difficult to change her mind. Annie Shin, if you could replace Annie Tong in the entertainment circle, you would have won several awards now. Jing Yunzhao said with a smile. Behind the smile, there was a coldness that made people feel cold. Chapter 937. Jing Yunzhao's words were obviously sarcastic, but she didn't seem to hear it. She was still smiling very kindly. Really? But I'm not as lucky as your Aunt Tong. At that time, there were no famous directors who liked me. Besides, the entertainment circle is too complicated. It's not suitable for people like me. Shinshi smiled. Jing Yunzhao suddenly smiled and looked at Shinshi with sarcasm. Shinshi didn't give in. Her eyes were calm, and people couldn't find any flaws. In fact, it wasn't as if there wasn't a quick way to deal with Shinshi. Grandfather Shin and her two uncles doted on her very much, so she could completely push the blame to Shinshi. When the time came, even if her uncles knew that Shinshi was wrongly accused, they might still choose to chase Shinshi out of the family. After all, Shinshi and her uncle's relationship didn't seem as deep as it was rumored to be. But this method didn't suit her. What she wanted was real evidence, not to consume the feelings of her family and take advantage of their trust. There was still a long time in the future. The person who should be anxious was definitely not her. Sooner or later, she would show her foxtail. Jing Yunzhao spent the weekend at home peacefully. On the surface, it seemed that nothing had happened. The winter vacation was coming. Jing Yunzhao began to be busy with various exams. But she was good in all aspects, so she didn't have to worry about failing. She even scored well in every subject, so people still looked up to her. Maybe there were some people who were jealous of her at first, but after getting along with her for half a year, all the jealousy disappeared. After all, the gap between Jing Yunzhao and them was too big. Jealousy couldn't express that kind of untouchable emotion. On this day of the vacation, there was a bit of reluctance in the dormitory. Yao Baobao was a foreigner, so she naturally wouldn't stay in Jingdu. She definitely wouldn't be able to attend Jing Yunzhao's birthday party. She couldn't help but feel that it was a pity. I'm leaving. You have to miss me. Great immortal, You have to leave me a share of whatever good stuff you have. Otherwise, I won't let you off. Also, Jingjing, you have to mention my name in front of Haiti often. It wasn't easy for him to learn to call me Bao Bao. Xing, you too. You have to call me every day. Yao Bao Bao packed her luggage and began to pout. Her temperament hadn't changed at all, but her ability to take care of herself had improved a lot. At the very least, she could do an excellent job of organizing the house. All right, we got it. I promise that as long as there's someone else's share, there's also yours. We'll give you a share of everything delicious and fun. It's only been a month. You don't have to be so mushy, do you? What Tianxian shook her head speechlessly. Among the few of them, Baby Yao was the best at acting coquettishly. However, it had to be said that she had improved the atmosphere in the dormitory to a certain extent. As for Ren Xingyue, she was the one with the lowest sense of presence. However, she often saw things very clearly. It was just that she didn't like to talk much. Jing Yunjiao and the other two expressed their concern. Only then did Baby Yao feel a little satisfied. She stared at Heidi and refused to let go. Jingjing, why don't you let Heidi live with me for a month? The three of you can get together often, but I can't. After I get home, Dad, Mom, and Brother definitely won't let me go out. However, as soon as Baby Yao finished speaking, Heidi immediately jumped onto Jing Yunjiao's shoulder. He grabbed onto her clothes with his claws and leaned against the side of her neck. He had an attitude that said he wasn't willing to be abducted. Everyone was already used to Heidi's behavior. You saw it too. He's unwilling. Jing Yunjiao spread her hands helplessly. Chapter 938. Heidi stuck close to Jing Yunjiao and didn't even look at Yao Bao Bao. His arrogance made Yao Bao Bao speechless. She pointed at Heidi and said angrily, "You little heartless brat, who took care of you when Jing wasn't around. Let me remind you that Heidi is very smart. If you scold him like this, he might forget who you are when you come back." Hua Tianxian was gloating. Yao Bao Bao was speechless after hearing this. "When I go back, I'll ask my brother to find me a pet in the dormitory." Yao Bao Bao pouted. "Your pet might only be close to Jing Er." Hua Tianxian continued to attack. "No, it's mine. Let's talk about it after you have it." The two of them often bickered, and Jing Yunjiao was used to it. He ignored them and started to pack his things. Not long after, Yao Bao Bao went out. Mother Yao came downstairs to pick her up. Ren Xingyue was the slowest to pack among them. She was disinterested and didn't feel relaxed at all. "Xingyue, what's wrong? You've been packing for a few hours and your things haven't been touched." Jing Yunjiao asked with concern. Ren Xingyue smiled. "I don't want to go back to the Zhou family. Zhou Meijun is dead, and my aunt is suspicious all day. She's always saying that I killed her because I coveted the Zhou family's assets." Jing Yunjiao choked for a moment. Mrs. Zhou's resentment was not unreasonable. Mrs. Zhou's younger brother was defeated by her. He was still in prison, and her daughter was dead. Since they were roommates, she would definitely implicate Ren Xingyue with her resentment. However, she didn't think she did anything wrong. Zhou Meijun's death was her own fault. As for Mrs. Zhou, she didn't teach her daughter well and wasn't a kind person. She was just a little timid. Otherwise, she wouldn't be any better than her daughter. "Don't you have your own income now? In fact, you can rent a house outside, right?" Jing Yunjiao asked again. Ren Xingyue shook her head. "No, my uncle doesn't have any children. He's already raising me as his successor. If I were to live outside, he would definitely be very disappointed." Jing Yunjiao could tell that Ren Xingyue had strong self-control and was independent. She probably wasn't interested in the Zhou family's property. However, she had received her uncle's kindness for many years and couldn't repay kindness with evil. "Xingyue, your uncle, hasn't had a child for so many years. Is there something wrong with his body? I know some medical skills. Do you want me to take a look?" Jing Yunjiao thought about it and asked tentatively. Ren Xingyue and Hua Tianxian were both stunned. Ren Xingyue blushed. "That's not very good, right? After all, isn't your boyfriend jealous? Why would I be jealous?" Jing Yunjiao was a little puzzled, but he quickly reacted and was instantly speechless. "Are you guys thinking the wrong way? Western medicine does take sperm for testing, but I don't need it. From a person's pulse, tongue, eyes, ears, mouth, and nose, you can almost see the functions of every part of the body. For example, the tongue. Its meridians are directly or indirectly connected to the heart, liver, spleen, kidney, and many other organs. A normal person's tongue is soft and can move freely. It's light red in color, and the tongue is covered with thin, evenly grained, moderately dry white moss. Its shape is long and oval, and it's moderately fat and thin. The root of the tongue belongs to the kidney, which can reflect a person's reproductive function. Some people's tongues are light, especially the root of the tongue, which is lighter than normal, indicating that the kidney qi and kidney yang are insufficient. Chapter 939. Jing Yunzhao spoke frankly and with assurance, explaining everything in great detail, but the two of them were still confused by what they heard. You mean, unlike those hospitals, they don't need? Hua Tianxian paused and smiled awkwardly. If that's the case, it shouldn't be a problem to take a look. But Xingyu, I still have some confidence in this aspect. But if your uncle's condition is cured, then the one who will benefit from it would be your aunt. Jing Yunzhao didn't forget to remind her. I'm not afraid of that. My aunt is listless now and always makes trouble. My uncle is ready to divorce her, but he's not a particularly heartless person. When the time comes, he will buy a property and let someone take care of her, Ren Xingyue said. In fact, if her aunt didn't make trouble, with her uncle's personality, he would definitely feel sorry for his wife because of the pain of losing his daughter and brother. It was impossible for him to divorce her. However, her aunt was selfish. She always felt that everyone owed her and Zhou Meijun. She didn't think about whether there was a problem with her education over the years. Although her uncle was a little weak, he wasn't stupid. Over the years, he had done a lot for his wife and daughter, and he usually doted on them. Now, her aunt was complaining that he wavered and didn't give the property to Zhou Meijun. How could he not be disappointed? Jing Yunzhao nodded. Ren Xingyue's uncle was young. Her aunt gave birth to Zhou Meijun when she was in her teens, and now she was less than 40 years old. Ren Xingyue's uncle was about the same age. Let's talk about it after your uncle's divorce, just in case, Jing Yunzhao said. If he was cured before the divorce, no matter if he was born with his first wife or with another woman, she would be disgusted. After the divorce, it would be different. If he was free, there wouldn't be any moral problems. Moreover, the Zhou family situation wasn't bad. It wouldn't be difficult for him to find a good wife. Jinger, you're really our little expert at home. You can solve any problem. If I have a headache or fever in the future, I don't need to look for others. You're enough. Hua Tianxian changed into new clothes and stood in front of her leather suitcase, which was worth more than 100,000 yuan, dazzling. I can solve some problems, but not others. Jing Yunzhao teased and said, for example, your instructor Qi. Even if I put a knife to his neck, he wouldn't be willing to work for your family, so don't make things difficult for me next time. Jing Yunzhao shook her head. Over the past few days, Hua Tianxian had asked her to get Qi Zhong to appear. Why are you talking about him? You're so annoying. Hua Tianxian immediately became listless. Since she was young, she had never encountered any setbacks. But now, Qi Zhong was like a tall mountain in front of her that she could not cross no matter how hard she tried. She originally thought that Qi Zhong also had some feelings for her, but after knowing him for so long, she became more and more disappointed. Qi Zhong was a person with a strong sense of responsibility. He was an iron-blooded man with dignity and rationality. Although he treated her differently during the military training, now that she thought about it, it was all because she was Jing Yunzhao's roommate. In fact, Qi Zhong treated Jing Yunzhao differently, not her. Every time he saw her gorgeously dressed and said those words of dissatisfaction, it was not because he was jealous, but because he felt that she was an arrogant young lady and was afraid that she would lead Jing Yunzhao astray. She didn't say some things directly, not because she didn't know, but because she also had dignity. I sent him a message yesterday and told him that I'll have a blind date with a few boys from my uncle's family during the holidays. I also told him the specific time. If he doesn't come, I'll find a suitable match and get engaged. Hua Tianxian lowered her head and touched her nails. Chapter 940. Jing Yunjiao and Ren Xingyue were stunned by Hua Tianxian's words. Hua Tianxian had just become an adult. Wasn't it a little too early for her to be thinking about getting engaged? Seeing the shock in their eyes, Hua Tianxian smiled and said, "Do you think it's so easy to be the eldest daughter of the Hua family? My parents don't have any other children. I'm the only one. My life has to be completely stable and follow the rhythm set by them. I want to get engaged now, get married when I'm of age, and have an heir as soon as possible. That's what I want to do." "But don't you like Instructor Qi very much?" Ren Xingyue frowned. "I know in my heart that liking someone and living a life are two different things. Someone like Qi Zhong, I can't control him. If he loves me very much, I might be able to fight for him. But the truth is that I'm thinking too much. He won't do anything for me. How can I fight against my parents for him? Besides, everything I have now is given to me by my parents. As a person, we should know how to repay kindness. I understand this. Qi Zhong's job is special. Maybe he's in a high position, but judging from his personality, he's not the kind of person who would take advantage of others. In other words, even if we really get together, he won't use his identity to open a path for the Hua family. I, on the other hand, have to worry about him being in danger one day. When I was very young, my parents told me that being together is no different from doing business. If you only invest and don't get any returns, of course, the business won't be able to continue. And if you work on projects that you're not suitable for and can't control, it's the same. In the end, you'll end up with nothing. If you have to choose one of the two, you have to choose the one that you're good at and can control." Hua Tianxian had a flamboyant smile on her face, but what she said surprised Jing Yunjiao. She and Li Xiaoyun had always thought that Qi Zhong and Hua Tianxian were a good match, but only in terms of personality. But now, it seemed that they hadn't seen what Hua Tianxian cared about the most before. The education she had received and the things she had experienced since she was a child had completely determined her future. As the daughter of the Hua family, she had enjoyed that kind of privilege and naturally had to bear the responsibility. She would not be a moth to a flame for a man. "If Qi Zhong heard what you said, he might be very surprised and treat you differently," Jing Yunjiao said. "Silly, Jing-er. Although I don't have much experience in love, I've seen a lot of it. When a man sees too many little and lovable women, he'll be interested in independent and self-reliant women. When he's used to seeing arrogant and despotic women, then sensible and steady women will have another kind of fatal temptation. But even if these two situations are reversed, it's still the same. Therefore, they only like one word, fresh. If you can see through it and think it through, it means that your feelings are not as strong as they used to be," Hua Tianxian continued. Suddenly, she seemed to have become a master of love. Jing Yunjiao pursed his lips and felt that it made sense. "You're right," Jing Yunjiao admitted. "But there's one kind of person who's an exception." Hua Tianxian stared at her mysteriously and smiled. After she finished speaking, she dragged her suitcase out of the door. Her body twisted like a snake. Jing Yunjiao was a little confused by her first half of the sentence, but when she thought about it, Li Xiaoyun's figure appeared in her mind. Yes, what she said was right, but it only applied to some people. She and Li Xiaoyun should belong to the minority. She was calm enough, and so was Li Xiaoyun. They stood in their respective positions and didn't disturb each other, but they involved each other. Neither of them thought of getting anything in return from the other. They just did what they wanted to do. Chapter 941. Jing Yunjiao's lips curled into a gentle smile. Ren Xingyue was stunned for a moment. She suddenly felt as if it was just a flash in the pan. Hua Tianxian and Yao Baobao left. Jing Yunjiao and Ren Xingyue didn't stay for long either. They each went their own way. Once they reached the door, Jing Yunjiao suddenly froze. As soon as she appeared, 4 people got out of the 4 cars at the door and looked at her. The 4 of them happened to be in 4 different directions. When they saw each other's movements, they were all stunned. Jing Yunjiao pursed her lips and watched as the 4 people walked over. Li Xiaoyun, who was standing in front of her, looked like he was stepping on a cloud. His aura wasn't weak at all, and he had a smile on his face. Pak Yuan, who was on the left, looked a little confused, but he was calm. Su Wenqing, who was on the right, stared at Li Xiaoyun with a serious expression. As for the class representative, Han Nan, who didn't understand the situation at all, was a little confused. Han Nan was closer, so he didn't pay much attention to the others. He stepped forward and said, Jing Yunjiao, we have a car coming to pick you up. I was wondering, are you going to Yang Province? Do you want me to ask Mom and Dad to send you there? He smiled shyly and was about to bend down to help Jing Yunjiao carry her luggage. No need. I'm not going back to Yang Province for the time being. Jing Yunjiao said politely and avoided the topic. The only person she couldn't let go of in Huaning County was Grandpa Gone. However, she had already called him 2 days ago and told him that she had found her biological grandfather and uncle. This time, she would be staying in Jingdu for the new year. She also told him that she would let Suchu and Gan Jinshan play at her house for a few days before the new year and come to her birthday party. Han Nan froze for a moment, but then he said happily, You're staying in Jingdu? Then where are you going? It'll be more convenient for me to send you there. If you don't have a place to stay, you can stay at my house for the time being. My parents are in the car right now. They like you very much. Sorry, there's no need, Jing Yunjiao said immediately. At this time, Jing Yunjiao was already a little unhappy, obviously showing the intention to resist. Jing Yunjiao, what's wrong with me? Han Nan's hands drooped and his eyes darkened. At the side, Li Xiaoyun and the other two also heard this sentence. Their footsteps paused, and the corner of Li Xiaoyun's mouth twitched. His eyes were slightly gloomy. Ah Zhao. Li Xiaoyun stepped forward, grabbed Jing Yunjiao's shoulder, and pulled him into his embrace. Looking at Han Nan, the corners of his mouth curled up. Your little classmate? Yes, our class monitor. Jing Yunjiao nodded. Oh, class monitor. Li Xiaoyun snorted and patted Han Nan's shoulder. Not bad. With that, he swept past Han Nan and reached out to pick up Jing Yunjiao's luggage. Han Nan wasn't short, but he wasn't outstanding either. He was between 1.75 and 1.8 meters tall. Li Xiaoyun, on the other hand, was 1.85 meters tall. Not only was he tall, but his appearance was also outstanding. In front of him, Han Nan was instantly overshadowed. It was precisely because he had opened his mouth to say not bad that Han Nan felt even more embarrassed. This man in front of him didn't even put him in his eyes. Who are you? Han Nan mustered up his courage and asked. Me? I'm Ma Zhao's fiancé. You have a problem with that? Li Xiaoyun chuckled, but it made Han Nan's entire body tense up. Han Nan subconsciously took a step back, his face pale. He then looked at the two men who were closing in on him, and his face became even worse. He even felt like his heart had been turned green. He looked at Jing Yunjiao in disappointment, then turned around and ran back to the car. Chapter 942. After Han Nan left, the atmosphere between the three became even more awkward. Pak Yuan was older than Su Wenqing by 3 or 4 years, but for some reason, he felt slightly nervous in front of the other two. Chief Jing. Pak Yuan cleverly chose the most polite form of address. Normally, Pak Yuan would call her Yunjiao in private. At first, Jing Yunjiao treated him like an uncle, but later, Pak Yuan didn't like it because it sounded old. So he changed the way he addressed him and recognized him as his older brother. But at the time, she didn't know she had an uncle, so her age and seniority were a bit strange. When Pak Yuan called him Chief Jing, Su Wenqing let out a sigh of relief and began to focus on Li Xiaoyun. Who are you? Su Wenqing spoke first. Li Xiaoyun. Second Uncle Su. Nice to meet you. Li Xiaoyun's lips curved. He looked very polite, but it didn't feel like he had any intention of lowering his head. Li Xiaoyun? Su Yuanqing frowned. He felt that this name was very familiar. After thinking carefully, he remembered that he seemed to have heard his older brother mention this name before, but he couldn't remember what it was specifically about. When did you become Xiao Zhao's fiancé? Mr. Li, I hope you won't ruin her reputation. Su Wenqing spoke again. His face was full of displeasure, but his eyes were already sizing up Li Xiaoyun. His style was low-key and gentlemanly. His clothes were expensive but not gaudy. They complemented his figure and could be considered perfect. Appearance. Su Wenqing's eyes flashed. He sighed inwardly. He couldn't compare. Their figures were about the same, but Li Xiaoyun seemed to have a bit more strength. As a man, He felt a sense of danger just by looking at him. However, although the overall rating was high, the last one was even higher. That was the degree of danger. At this moment, Li Xiaoyun smiled. Zhao and I have known each other for a long time before second Uncle Su, and I have already received grandfather's approval. My goal is to marry her and spend the rest of my life with her. Naturally, it is more appropriate to call her fiancé. Second Uncle Su, you don't know much about Zhao's past. You can go back and ask grandfather. These few simple words instantly made Su Wenqing's face turn green. Jing Yunzhao snickered in his heart. In the past, Li Xiaoyun only called his grandfather Elder Su. Now, in front of his second uncle, he even called him grandfather in advance. Second uncle, he is my man. I hope you can agree. Jing Yunzhao held Li Xiaoyun's arm and said to Su Wenqing. Suddenly, Su Wenqing felt a blow in his heart. It was a critical blow, a blow to his heart. He had finally found his niece, but she had already found her other half. He had yet to experience the feeling of raising a niece, but this person had already become someone else's. His heart ached. Pak Yuan coughed awkwardly. Who is he? Is he the general manager of your pharmaceutical company? Su Wenqing found a way out for himself and asked. No, this is my elder brother, Pak Yuan. Jing Yunzhao told him the truth. Pak Yuan had managed the company for her for 3 years. He had always put her first and helped her a lot. She couldn't ignore her previous relatives just because she had a biological uncle. Moreover, Big Brother Bai did love her as if she was his biological sister. He had also helped her in her previous life. Su Wenqing's mouth twitched fiercely. Double critical blow. Xiao Zhao. Your birthday is just around the corner. Do you still have any elders who treat you well? Do you want to invite them over? Su Wenqing thought about it and asked again. Since she was going to be provoked, she might as well accept it once and for all. Otherwise, she would feel that she had been separated from him again. Chapter 943. Su Wenqing's face was filled with anticipation, while Pak Yuan was touched by Jing Yunzhao's greeting. Li Xiaoyun stood to the side without saying anything, but it was clear that he had won the first round of competition with his second uncle. I also have a god-grandfather who loves me a lot, Jing Yunzhao added. In terms of god relatives, the only ones left were Grandpa Gon and Pak Yuan. Grandpa? Su Wenqing thought about it. Grandpa Gon was an elder after all, so it was still acceptable. At the very least, it was more acceptable than the other two in front of him. Su Wenqing's face was full of emotions as he glanced at Pak Yuan. His attitude was still polite, but when he looked at Li Xiaoyun, his eyes seemed to burst into flames. Only in front of Jing Yunzhao, he restrained himself. Since you're a god relative, you should interact more in the future. Remember to tell your god-grandfather about the birthday banquet. It's best if you invite him over so that the two families can get to know each other, Su Wenqing said. Although he was jealous of his niece's closeness to others, he also felt guilty. If they had found her earlier, she wouldn't have to rely on others. Jing Yunzhao's god-grandfather had taken care of her on behalf of them, so it was only right for them to thank him. Jing Yunzhao didn't want Grandpa Gon to come all the way here because of his old age, but after hearing Su Wenqing's words, he felt that it made sense and nodded. Uncle, take my luggage and go back first. Xiaoyun, you too. I have something to discuss with Brother Bai, Jing Yunzhao said in the next moment. Pak Yuan came to the capital because of her suggestion. In the past half a year, Pak Yuan had been expanding their factory due to their increasing sales. Now, the factory was more than 200,000 square meters, and they had invested more than 1 billion yuan, making them one of the most influential enterprises in the Yang province. However, because Jing Yunzhao wasn't in the Yang province all this time, most of the time, he was only responsible for making decisions. However, the fact that Yuling Wines could be so successful was mainly due to the connection she had built up over the past 2 years. Furthermore, with the Tang family's cooperation, it was naturally smooth sailing. However, Jing Yunzhao did not intend to stop there. What she wanted was not a company, but a large group. Now, she had asked Pak Yuan to come to Jingdu. On one hand, it was to plan for a branch company. On the other hand, it was also to acquire some companies with potential. However, she still had memories of her previous life. Although she was in prison, she had seen the news. She already had a target to acquire, but she had to take it step by step. At this moment, when Jing Yunjiao spoke, Su Wenqing looked at Pak Yuan with a stifled heart. However, Jing Yunjiao simply did not have the ability to refuse. Fortunately, Li Xiaoyun was also rejected by her, which made Su Wenqing, her second uncle, feel a lot better. Li Xiaoyun was clear about Pak Yuan's other identity. Of course, he would not say much and simply responded. However, a second before Jing Yunjiao and Pak Yuan got in the car, his thin lips came close to her forehead and gently touched her. Jing Yunjiao's face was faintly red before she got in the car. Su Wenqing was left fuming with anger. He glared at Li Xiaoyun. "You stay away from her." Su Wenqing was extremely dissatisfied. He wished he could hit him. Jing Yunjiao did not even resist him as an uncle. What kind of charm did this man have to make her let down all her guard against him? "Second uncle, that's my future wife. It's not normal to stay away from her, right?" Li Xiaoyun's mouth was slanted. The smile was thick, with a bit of gentle evil. Su Wenqing coldly snorted. Xiao Zhao is young and easily deceived. In the past, there was no elder to help her, but in the future, there will be. Whether you can be her future husband is still uncertain. Chapter 944. Su Wenqing had almost thrown Li Xiaoyun into the cold palace at this time. He directly determined that Li Xiaoyun was a playboy who had bad intentions and abducted little girls. He looked down on Li Xiaoyun condescendingly and tried to make Li Xiaoyun retreat. "Whether she will marry me in the future is not up to you, second uncle. You might as well go back and ask Grandpa. I don't know if he is on your side or mine." Li Xiaoyun's eyes were dark and there was a chilling aura around him. For the past 2 years, he had been absolutely respectful to the old man. The old man knew better than anyone else who was worthy of Jing Yunjiao in this world. Even though that old man sometimes found him to be an eyesore, it was only because of his small temper. When it came to Jing Yunjiao, the old man's thoughts were clearer than anyone else's. He could see that Jing Yunjiao was good to him. "Don't talk about Grandpa Li. Besides, I didn't agree to you calling me second uncle." Su Wenqing was about to spit out blood. "Whether you agree or not, second uncle can't run away." Li Xiaoyun continued to smile. After knowing that Jing Yunjiao was indeed related to the Su family, he immediately investigated the 2 uncles of the Su family. According to what they had done, he knew them very well. After all, Su Yuantek was a little old. He was more mature, focused on benefits, and focused on ability. If he wanted to satisfy him, he had to follow the path of strength. He did not have to worry about this at all. The Li family was a military family and did not lack power and financial resources. Their background would satisfy him. Moreover, he had a place in the military. Naturally, there was no need to talk about influence. In terms of power, connections, and even influence, Su Yuantek might not win against him. As for Su Wenqing, after all, he was young. He was in the business world and had not experienced many big crises. Therefore, he was still full of edges and corners. To deal with people like him, going along with his hair would only make him more arrogant. Even if he was really capable, he would look down on him more and more. Therefore, he had to use force to smooth out his temper. Although he was 4 years younger than Su Wenqing, in terms of boldness, Su Wenqing was no match for him. Ever since he was a teenager, he had lived a dangerous life that was different from others. He had done hundreds of missions and spent most of his time fighting. What kind of people had he not seen? Su Wenqing was indeed outstanding and capable enough, but he lacked one thing, and that was his ups and downs. Perhaps after a few more years, Su Wenqing would become even stronger, and his mind would become more stable than it was now. Li Xiaoyun's gaze made Su Wenqing feel strange. All these years, he had always looked at others with a scrutinizing gaze. No one had ever dared to look at him like that. However, he felt a kind of pressure from Li Xiaoyun. The other party was clearly very young. Thinking of this, a glimmer of light flashed across Su Yuanqing's eyes. He suddenly remembered the name Li Xiaoyun, but he instantly frowned in disbelief. Li Xiaoyun was the grandson of the god of war, Li Junwei. He was older than him by a few years, so he had heard of many of his deeds. When Li Xiaoyun was born, he was raised by Li Junwei. Later, he went to the army in the north. It was said that he grew up drinking wolf's milk. Since elementary school, he had been learning how to walk and hunt. However, after staying in the army for a few years, Li Junwei found a martial arts expert he knew in the past and let Li Xiaoyun become his disciple. Then, he lived the life of a master for a few years. The reason why his story spread was that when Li Xiaoyun was sent away by Li Junwei, the Li couple caused a ruckus for a period of time. Many people had heard of it. The old man had also said in front of him that Li Junwei had guts and a temper. He was a person who was rarely open-minded. Chapter 945. During Li Xiaoyun's apprenticeship, the old master of the Li family searched for all kinds of talents and sent them to him. Therefore, some people said that Li Xiaoyun not only knew martial arts, but also had a good understanding of firearms, knew the art of war, and was good at scheming. The old master even joked that Li Junwei was grooming his grandson to become the new god of war. However, at that time, many people thought that Li Junwei's action was superfluous. He was just torturing his grandson. After all, if it was in ancient times, Li Xiaoyun would definitely be famous if he had the ability. But in modern times, it was impossible. Li Xiaoyun's glory lasted until he was about 16 years old. Then, there was suddenly not much news about him. Li Junwei also rarely mentioned him in front of outsiders. Slowly, he disappeared from the memories of the young people of his generation. Back then, some of his friends joked that old Master Li might have raised his grandson into a David. The corner of Su Wenqing's mouth twitched. He had once sympathized with this kid for having such an unreliable grandfather, but at that time, he didn't know that one day, this person would stand in front of him and become Su Wenqing's nephew. Li Junwei from the Li family is your grandfather? Su Wenqing asked after a while. If that was the case, then Li Xiaoyun was really a noble young master. Although the Li family was not as powerful as the Su family, which had been passed down for thousands of years, it was very famous now. That's right, Li Xiaoyun replied frankly. The way Su Wenqing looked at Li Xiaoyun had changed a little. It turned out that the abnormal young man who had attracted a lot of attention back then was the man in front of him. However, it was a pity that his reputation was from his youth. Now, he was probably a hedonistic young master, right? Even if you are from the Li family, it is impossible to change my opinion. It is too early for Xiao Zhao to talk about love. In the future, I will not object to her meeting more people. If you use the identity of the Li family to suppress her, just try it. Su Wenqing immediately threatened. Li Xiaoyun glanced at him, speechless. Second uncle, although it makes me a little uncomfortable to let her get to know other people, I have absolute trust in A Zhao. You can give it a try. If you succeed, then you can say whatever you want. Li Xiaoyun raised his eyebrows and shook his head secretly. He walked towards his car. How much effort did he put in to get A Zhao to treat him differently these past few years? If Su Wenqing could casually find someone to do it, then even if he succeeded, he wouldn't feel wronged. Jing Yunzhao's heart was like a pool of stagnant water. Its surroundings were sealed, and there was no wind or rain. Nothing from the outside could enter it at all. He had tried his best to make her feel a little bit. To be able to do this, firstly, he had the ability. Secondly, he was worthy of A Zhao's taste. As for other people, whether it was in terms of appearance, family background, or temperament, it was unlikely that she could find someone who was compatible with her. Although there were many young masters of noble families who were of the same age as her, there was absolutely no one else who could give her absolute freedom and protection. Li Xiaoyun's back was tall and straight. Even if his face couldn't be seen, his figure attracted the attention of many women. Su Wenqing frowned and felt a little awkward. This time, he was going against Li Xiaoyun. Didn't he say that he could try? In that case, he wouldn't be polite. There were so many good young men in the capital. He didn't believe that no one could make his niece's heart move. In order to prevent Yun Zhao from following her mother's footsteps, it was better for this man to be more careful. When Su Wenqing angrily returned to the Su family, Jing Yunzhao and Pak Yuan found a restaurant to sit down and chat. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.